Chapter 26:45. In the face of imminent disaster, the Imperial Preceptor did not hesitate to speed up his escape. Of course, in order not to be accused of abandoning his master, he shouted to warn the Great Emperor of Heaven Punisher. When the Great Emperor of Heaven Punisher turned around, the Imperial Tutor was already 100 miles away. More than 60 lava pillars immediately engulfed the Great Emperor of Heaven Punisher. *****. The Imperial Tutor was so cowardly that he had fled alone. The Great Emperor of Heaven Punisher was so angry that his body trembled. He could not help but curse. But he knew that now was not the time to be angry. He hurriedly waved his divine sword and slashed out dozens of purple sword radiances at the lava pillars around him. Bam! 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 A series of muffled sounds rang out. The sword radiances collapsed and fire splattered everywhere. The Great Emperor of Heaven Punisher had neutralized Ji Tianqing's attack, but his hair was disheveled and his body was charred. He looked rather pathetic. His divine power was also rapidly depleting and weakening. At the same time, more than 30 lava pillars changed directions and blasted toward the Imperial Tutor, who was 100 miles away. The Imperial Tutor panicked. He hurriedly formed a shield to block the attacks. He also waved his divine sword and slashed out countless sword radiances. Bam! 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 After a series of muffled sounds, the sword radiances and lava pillars all collapsed. However, the dark red divine flames had destroyed the Imperial Tutor's divine power shield. Half of his body was charred black, and one of his legs was burned to ashes. The heart-wrenching pain caused him to let out a shrill scream that reverberated endlessly in the sky. Ah! Ji Tianqing, you be ****, you be ****. I will tear you to pieces and burn your bones to ashes. However, the Imperial Tutor's response was more than 100 lava pillars. Each pillar was more than 100 feet tall and surrounded by surging red divine flames. They blasted toward the Imperial Tutor. The Imperial Preceptor's body suddenly trembled. His eyes were filled with deep fear. In his fear, he even forgot about the pain in his body and teleported away. However, he was still one step too slow. Although he dodged more than 90 fire pillars, he was still hit by 7 of them. Ping ping ping. Another series of muffled sounds rang out. Half of the Imperial Tutor's body was completely burned to ashes by the divine flames and scattered in the sky. The remaining half of his body was also charred black, with black smoke rising in spirals. The wound was charred, and the purple divine blood that oozed out was also burned dry by the divine flame. The violent force of the impact sent the Imperial Tutor flying, rolling and crashing into the distance. The incomparable pain made him so angry that he almost lost his mind. Not far away, Great Emperor Tian Fa saw the Imperial Tutor being severely injured with his own eyes, but he couldn't save him in time. Furious, the Emperor of Heaven Punisher cursed 3 times. He quickly teleported to the Imperial Tutor's side to help him. He used a grappling technique and grabbed the Imperial Tutor with his giant purple palm. He teleported 800 miles away. However, hundreds of 5-colored giant swords emerged from the grassland and shot up into the sky from the ground. The Imperial Tutor was in so much pain that he couldn't defend himself. The Emperor of Heaven Punisher had no choice but to protect the Imperial Tutor. He waved his divine sword and used an exquisite sword technique, sending out hundreds of purple sword radiances. Ping ping ping. Crack. 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 The sword radiances clashed in the sky, creating muffled sounds and shattering sounds. The Imperial Tutor was saved and his injuries didn't worsen. However, the Emperor of Heaven Punisher's shield was shattered by the 5-colored sword radiances. A dozen wounds were left on his body, so deep that his bones could be seen. Purple blood gushed out and sprinkled in the sky. The Great Emperor of Heaven Extermination frowned. His eyes were filled with shock. Damn it! What kind of power is this? How can it break through my defense? He had fought with Ji Tianqing before and knew that Ji Tianqing was only a true immortal. However, he was a half-step true immortal. He was almost invincible among those below the true immortal realm. Ji Tianqing wouldn't be able to hurt him, no matter how powerful his divine skill was. However, he was injured now. He could clearly tell that the power of the five-colored sword radiances wasn't the power of a true immortal. It was a very special and powerful divine power. The power made him feel like he was fighting against the mountains and the earth. The entire world was trying to kill him. That's definitely not divine power. Even a true immortal might not be able to release that kind of power. However, Ji Tianqing is only a true immortal. How did he do it? The Emperor of Heaven Punisher was filled with questions. He couldn't figure it out. While he was thinking, more than 300 golden giant swords emerged from the grassland and shot toward him like a rain of arrows. The Emperor of Heaven Punisher came to his senses. He didn't dare to think anymore and quickly teleported away. At the same time, in the golden light ball at the core of the world, Ji Tianqing sat on the golden mountain with his eyes closed. A satisfied smile appeared on his face. Ha ha ha. I'm closely connected to the five elements world. Not only can I control heaven and earth, but I can also release the power of the world. I knew it. Even a true immortal would be injured by the power of the world, let alone the Emperor of Heaven Punisher. It was obvious that Ji Tianqing had used the power of the world to injure the Emperor of Heaven Punisher. Before this, he had only controlled 5 continents. He could only practice controlling heaven and earth to fight the Emperor of Heaven Punisher. Now, he could freely control heaven and earth to attack the Emperor of Heaven Punisher and the Imperial Tutor. Therefore, he tried again. He tried to use the power of the world. As expected, he succeeded. It was very effective. This lifted his spirits and made him even more confident. Then, the Emperor of Heaven Punisher fled in the sky. He ran all the way to the Luoshui divine nation. Ji Tianqing sat on the golden mountain and used his mind to control heaven and earth to attack. He also released the power of the world to chase after the Emperor of Heaven Punisher. The Emperor of Heaven Punisher fled for several hours, covering hundreds of thousands of kilometers. His divine power had been greatly weakened, and his injuries were worsening. Dozens of wounds had appeared all over his body. As time passed, his situation would only worsen. He was only injured. In comparison, the Imperial Tutor's fate was much worse. He had only managed to escape 100,000 kilometers before he was killed by a blade of light condensed from the power of the world, and his body was torn to shreds. The Emperor of Heaven Punisher could not even protect himself, let alone save the Imperial Tutor. The dignified 6th-level true immortal Imperial Tutor had fallen just like that. In order to escape as quickly as possible and to defend against Ji Tianqing's attacks, the Emperor of Heaven Punisher had no choice but to take out his warship. The Heaven Punishing warship was a god-grade warship, and its defenses were extremely strong. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, the Heaven Punishing warship had covered hundreds of kilometers with purple light. However, Ji Tianqing controlled 5 continents. His divine consciousness covered not only Shenwu continent, but the other 4 continents as well. As long as the Heaven Punishing warship did not leave Shenwu continent and the 5 elemental realm, it would still be under Ji Tianqing's control. Moreover, the Heaven Punishing warship was 10,000 meters long and as large as a mountain. Such a large target was much easier to hit than the Emperor of Heaven Punisher. Wherever the Heaven Punishing warship passed, tens of thousands of golden blades of light appeared and rained down like a torrential downpour. Boom, 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 boom. Every second, the Heaven Punishing warship was struck by the golden blades of light dozens of times. Chapter 2646. In the blink of an eye, an hour passed. Great Emperor Tian Fa drove the divine battleship and escaped 60,000 miles away. He was about to reach the border of the Luoshui divine nation. However, the divine battleship was hit by the golden light blade tens of thousands of times. Finally, it could not take it anymore and collapsed. The divine battleship, which was 30,000 feet long, was cut into pieces and scattered among the ruins. More than 2,000 people who had followed the great Emperor of Heaven punishing to the battle fell from the sky. Among them were 2,000 black-armored warriors, more than 30 golden-armored martial gods, and 2 LV-7 martial god realm commanders. These were the elites that great Emperor Tian Fa had handpicked. Originally, great Emperor Tian Fa had planned to send these elite warriors and martial gods to control the continents and divine nations after conquering the five elements world. But now, his plan had fallen through. The 2,000 black-armored warriors and golden-armored martial gods were scattered in the sky. They were exposed to Ji Tianqing's attacks. How could Ji Tianqing let go of such a great opportunity? Without hesitation, he controlled the heavens and earth and released the sacred and powerful power of the world. Tens of thousands of golden light blades shot toward the black-armored warriors and golden-armored martial gods. Swish! 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 The black-armored warriors and golden-armored martial gods found it difficult to move. They slowed down. Even though they were terrified when they saw the swish. Swish! 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 Great Emperor Tian Fa passed through the debris of the battleship and flew to the sky a few hundred miles away. When he saw this, his expression changed. He could not help but yell. Oh no! At this critical moment, he did not care about his own safety. He charged toward the crowd with his sword. He swung his divine sword with no regard for his own safety. He slashed out sword radiance to block the swish of the golden light blades. At the same time, he cast a purple light shield to protect the black-armored warriors and golden-armored martial gods. However, it was all in vain. Swish! 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 With a series of muffled sounds, the purple light shield that covered the sky was smashed into pieces. One after another, the black-armored warriors were struck by the golden blades of light and shattered into pieces on the spot. Even the martial gods in golden armor could not resist the attack of the golden light blade and were instantly cut into pieces. Suddenly, the black-armored warriors and golden-armored martial gods fell from the sky like dumplings. Countless pieces of flesh and blood fell on the ruined ground, and a purple rain of blood floated in the sky. The muffled sounds of the light blades colliding, the anguished cries of the people on the brink of death, and the despairing screams all mixed together and reverberated in the air. In just 20 breaths of time, the 2,000 black-armored warriors were all dead. With their strength as martial sages, they did not have the right to survive the battle of deities. Most of them were instantly killed by the golden blade. Only a few managed to escape from the golden light blades under the protection of the great Emperor of Heaven punishing. However, they were unable to escape the suppressive force of 100,000 miles of heaven and earth, and were crushed into minced meat in just a few moments. Even the more than 30 golden-armored martial gods could not hold on for long. 90% of them were killed by the golden light blades. The remaining few martial gods were severely injured and were barely hanging on. The great Emperor of Heaven punishing was also severely injured. There were dozens of wounds all over his body, and one of his legs had been crushed by the golden light blades. The great Emperor of Heaven punishing gave it his all and performed various secret skills. He even took out 3 supreme-grade true god weapons to protect himself and the few golden-armored martial gods who were severely injured. Under the great Emperor of Heaven punishing's protection, the few martial gods desperately fled to the south. However, Ji Tianqing did not stop chasing after them. After 15 minutes, the few golden-armored martial gods who were severely injured were also crushed into pieces. The great Emperor of Heaven punishing was the only one left in the world, and he was still fighting alone. He continued to flee to the south, avoiding and blocking Ji Tianqing's attacks along the way. However, his injuries were getting worse, and his divine power was weakening. His combat strength was also decreasing rapidly. He gradually calmed down from his initial anger. No matter how unwilling he was, he had to face reality. He had to admit that he had lost. It was true that he could not defeat Ji Tianqing in the world of 5 elements. Ji Tianqing had not shown himself since the beginning. He had only been attacking and hunting in the dark. However, the people around the great Emperor of Heaven Punishing had all been killed. He was the only one left, and he was also severely injured. He had fled for several hours, covering hundreds of thousands of miles. In the beginning, he had thought that Ji Tianqing would eventually run out of energy. When that happened, he would have a chance to escape danger and find a way to counterattack. However, reality had proven that Ji Tianqing's energy seemed to be limitless. Not only had he not run out of energy, but he also showed no signs of weakening. This was too terrifying. This was also one of the reasons why the great Emperor of Heaven Punishing was so shocked and depressed. He had reason to believe that even if he fled for another 1,000,000 miles, he would still not be able to escape Ji Tianqing's pursuit. Moreover, Ji Tianqing's energy would not run out. It seems that Ji Tianqing has completely mastered the law of Earth. He can even use that special power. If I continue to fight with him, I won't even be able to touch his shadow. I might even die. A few years ago, I captured him easily and almost killed him. Now, he has forced me into such a desperate situation. This is a humiliation, a great humiliation. The great Emperor of Heaven Punishing thought to himself as he fled. It seems that I can only save my life if I leave this place. Even if I give up this world and the boundless divine stone, I still have a few star regions and billions of people and soldiers. There are still thousands of worlds waiting for me to conquer. As for the world of 5 elements and Ji Tianqing, I have to think about it carefully. After making up his mind, the great Emperor of Heaven Punishing executed a divine technique and prepared to escape the world of 5 elements. He swung his divine sword with all his might and slashed open the sky. Crack! With a loud explosion, a 10-mile-long crack appeared in the sky. White gusts of wind and crimson heavenly flames poured down from the black spatial rifts. The great Emperor of Heaven Punishing passed through the crack in a flash and entered the layer of wind and fire. He was protected by a purple divine light as he passed through the vortex formed by the wind and fire. He flew toward the golden light barrier at an extremely fast speed. When Ji Tianqing saw this, he immediately frowned and was filled with anxiety. He knew that the great Emperor of Heaven Punishing was a great disaster. If the great Emperor of Heaven Punishing escaped from the world of 5 elements alive, it would be difficult to kill him in the future. Ji Tianqing wanted to use this opportunity to kill the great Emperor of Heaven Punishing in the world of 5 elements. However, he did not truly control the entire world. Currently, he only controlled 5 continents. He did not control the depths of the Earth's core, the endless heavenly ocean, or the layer of wind and fire outside the sky. Therefore, Ji Tianqing could not do anything when the great Emperor of Heaven Punishing entered the layer of wind and fire. He could only watch as the great Emperor of Heaven Punishing escaped from the world of 5 elements. Chapter 2647. Bam! The great Emperor of Heaven Punisher passed through the heavenly wind and fire layer and crashed into the golden light barrier. He held the divine sword with both hands and used all his strength to break a hole in the golden light barrier. After passing through the hole, he escaped from the 5 elements world and flew into the vast void. Although he was severely injured and had used up almost all of his divine power, he was at the end of his rope. However, the divine sword in his hand shone with purple light and carried him through the void. He fled into the distance at the speed of light. Swoosh! After a short while, the divine sword carried the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher into the void and disappeared into the darkness. Not long ago, he had brought the Imperial Preceptor and more than 2,000 guards with him, and they had charged over aggressively. Now, he was all alone. He was severely injured and had to flee in humiliation. He could only suppress his deep hatred in his heart and plot revenge in the future. In the core region of the Five Elements world. On the Golden Mountain in the middle of the Golden Light Sphere. Ji Tianqing slowly opened his eyes. His face was filled with regret as he let out a sigh. Sigh. What a pity. He escaped. If I miss this chance, it will be difficult to kill him again. As long as the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher was alive and the Heaven Punisher tribe was not destroyed, there would always be a hidden threat. He could not be at ease. After all, the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher had witnessed the wonders of the Five Elements world and the powerful effects of the Dawn Stones. Even the deity behind the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher was very interested in the Dawn Stones. No matter what, the Heaven Punisher tribe would not let go of the Five Elements world. That was why Ji Tianqing was worried and anxious. Fortunately, he had merged half of the Five Elements world and controlled the 5 continents. Even if the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher came back with the Heaven Punisher army in a few years, he would not be afraid. After this battle, the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher is severely injured. He will not be able to recover to his peak condition in at least 10 years. He will not dare to invade the Five Elements world again if he is not confident. We have at least 10 years. We must use this time to increase our strength. Ji Tianqing muttered to himself and clenched his fists. Then, he looked to his side and saw 2 black dawn stone jade slips floating in the air. He picked up the 2 jade slips and used his divine sense to read the information inside. After reading it, he realized that it was a message from Taihao Yunqi and Yun Yao, informing him of the invasion of the Heaven Punisher race and the arrival of the Heaven Punisher Great Emperor. Ji Tianqing received the scroll from Taihao Yunqi and replied with a message. Great Emperor Tian Fa was severely injured by me. He has already escaped from the world of 5 elements. I have destroyed the Heaven Punishing army and the battleships he brought with him. You don't have to worry. You should first comfort the people of the divine nation, then conserve your energy and strive to break through to the martial god realm as soon as possible. After he finished speaking, Ji Tianqing waved his hand and took out an origin stone jade slip. Swish! Jade simplified turned into a black light, passing through the golden ball of light and disappearing into the endless lava. Then, Ji Tianqing sent another message to Yun Yao. Yao Yao, I'm currently in the core region of the elemental world. Refining the world core might take a few more years. The Heaven Punisher Great Emperor has escaped with severe injuries. He won't dare to attack again for at least 10 years. I have destroyed the Imperial Tutor, more than 2,000 Heaven Punishers, and the Heaven Punishing Divine battleships. You don't have to worry. Take care of the affairs of the 2 divine nations and cultivate in seclusion in the Divine Pagoda. When I'm done, I'll meet up with you and we'll talk about it in detail. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and sent the origin stone jade slip out. Swish! The jade slip flew out of the golden ball of light and disappeared into the raging lava. Ji Tianqing did not waste any more time. He began to channel his energy and entered the Golden Mountain with his mind to refine the world meridian. He wanted to refine the other half of the world and fully control the world of 5 elements. By then, the world of 5 elements would be in a passive position and become active. After all, he would be able to leave the purple heaven star zone with the world of 5 elements. A moment later. In the distorted space in the Jiutian 10 Absolutes Tower. Yun Yao sat upright on an exquisite jade bed, her eyes closed as she circulated her energy to heal her injuries. Swoosh! In a flash, the origin stone jade slip flew over and stopped in front of her. She had been waiting for Ji Tianqing's news. When she sensed the arrival of the jade slip, she immediately stopped channeling her energy. She reached out to take the origin stone jade slip. After reading the information in it, she heaved a sigh of relief. That's great. Tianqing has indeed found a fortuitous opportunity in the depths of the Earth's core. He wants to refine the world of 5 elements. No wonder he can control the divine power of heaven and earth and fight with the great emperor of heaven and earth even though he's not in the 100,000 mountains. This is incredible. I have to tell Ko this good news quickly so that she won't worry. After saying that, Yunyao took the origin stone jade slip and went to find Ji Ku. The situation was just as she had expected. Ji Ku was channeling her energy to heal herself. However, she was restless and worried. She was only relieved when Yunyao gave her the jade slip and learned about the results. The two of them chatted for a while before Yunyao left. She returned to the jade bed to continue channeling her energy to heal herself. Ji Ku also followed Ji Tianqing's arrangement. She first went into seclusion to heal herself before working hard to improve her strength. Soon, the distorted space calmed down. Yunyao, Ji Ku, Bai Long, Qian Yu, Hei Long, Lan Kuan, Chen Chen, Yiya, and the others were all focused on cultivating. Time flew like a shuttle. Time flew like an arrow. Unknowingly, 400 years had passed in the distorted space. After 400 years of cultivating in seclusion, Bai Long, Lan Kuan, Qian Yu, and Hei Long broke through to the true God realm. Among them, Bai Long was the strongest. He had reached level 2 true God realm. Qian Yu and Hei Long were both at level 1 true God realm. The youngest, Chen Chen and Yiya, had also grown up. The siblings were indeed talented and extraordinary. They had both reached level 8 martial God realm. According to the speed of their strength improvement, they might break through to the true God realm in another 100 years. At that time, they would become the youngest true gods. However, the two of them did not change much in appearance. Chen Chen had grown to 5 feet tall. She looked like a handsome young man of 12 or 13 years old. Her appearance was very similar to Ji Tianqing. She had a noble and cold temperament. Yiya was only 2 inches shorter than Chen Chen. She looked like a naive 12-year-old girl. Not only did she inherit Yunyao's beauty, but she was even more beautiful. Although she looked like she was only 12 years old, she was already as beautiful as a fairy. She had a noble temperament. She was cheerful, innocent, and kind. Her pair of bright and clear eyes seemed to be able to purify all the evil in the world. Anyone who saw her would be amazed by the beauty of nature and the favor of the heavens. There was actually such a pure, holy, beautiful, and cute girl in the world. Perhaps only the children of the heavens were worthy of such beauty and temperament. As for Yunyao and Ji Ku, they had only cultivated in seclusion for 360 years. After all, they had left the godly pagoda a few times to deal with the matters of Tianqing and Luo Shui. Even so, their strength continued to increase. They had reached level 6 true God realm. Chapter 2648. 400 years had passed in the distorted space. Only 8 years had passed in the 5 elements world. 8 years had passed, but the 5 elements world did not seem to have changed much. There were no invasions, and the continents were as peaceful as before. The people lived and worked in peace, and the martial artists worked hard. The martial arts world was becoming more and more prosperous. Even if there were some small disturbances in the 5 continents, it was just a struggle between countries and factions. Only a few people knew that the world of 5 elements had actually undergone earth-shattering and world-shaking changes. Because a certain person who was good at creating miracles, had monstrous talent, and was the reincarnation of a divine king, had taken control of the entire world. The golden ball of light at the world's core was a mysterious space. The flow of time inside was 10 times faster than in the 5 elements world. 8 years had passed in the outside world, but 80 years had passed in the world's core. For 80 years, Ji Tianqing had been sitting at the peak of the Golden Mountain, refining the world's veins without stopping for a moment. His divine power had been exhausted more than 10 times, and his divine blood had been drained several times. He had also been unconscious for more than 20 years. However, he had merged with the five elements world, and the Golden Mountain would always release the world's power to nourish him. It was because of this that he was able to survive unscathed. His divine power would recover when it was exhausted, and his divine blood would be reborn when it was drained. As long as the five elements world was not destroyed, he would not die. Now, he had refined 99% of the world's veins, and almost controlled the entire world. The five continents, the endless sky sea, and the endless rock and lava deep underground were all under his control. There were only a few mysterious areas deep in the Earth's core that he had never been able to refine or touch. Those mysterious areas were like forbidden areas to him. With his current strength, he could not lift the veil of mystery, let alone control them. One of the areas was in the center of the ruins of God, the deepest underground. Ji Tianqing could guess that that area was the cemetery of the gods in the ruins of God. The cemetery of the gods had always been the five elements world's greatest secret. Whether it was in his previous life or this life, Ji Tianqing could not unravel the mysteries within. Now, he had become the master of the five elements world, but he still could not touch the cemetery of the gods. He finally understood that the cemetery of the gods was more mysterious and powerful than he had imagined. Other than that, there were a few other forbidden areas that were similar to the cemetery of the gods. There was almost no difference between being mysterious and being powerful. This made Ji Tianqing's heart itch, and he couldn't help but speculate and analyze. The mausoleum of the gods can even bury godlords and god-kings. This has always been the greatest secret of the five elements world. Perhaps only a divine king expert would have the chance to unravel the mystery. Unexpectedly, there were several forbidden areas in the world of five elements that were as mysterious as the graveyard of the gods. This further proved that the former five elements world was definitely not inferior to the dragon realm and the god realm. It was also an eternal primary world. However, the current world of five elements was obviously damaged and abandoned, and that was why it had fallen to such a state. He really wanted to recover to the God-King realm as soon as possible and unravel the mystery of the five elements world. Only then would I be able to understand what exactly happened in the ancient times. Ji Tianqing murmured, his eyes filled with hope and desire. Although his heart was filled with regret, he thought about it and felt slightly comforted. Although I can't touch those forbidden areas right now, I can't. However, I have complete control over the world of five elements and have already lived and died with it. Not only have I reached level 9 true God realm, but I can also control the world of five elements to leave this void and even leave the Zishao starfield. That's right. Ji Tianqing had cast spells on the Golden Mountain for 80 years. Not only had he controlled the entire world, but his strength had also reached level 9 true God realm. If not for the restrictions of the heavenly Tao, he could have broken through to the heavenly God realm. This result made Ji Tianqing realize a problem. The world of five elements in the ancient times was once an eternal primary world that could give birth to God spirits above the heavenly God realm. However, after the world of five elements was damaged and abandoned, it fell into the 3,000 mortal worlds and its level dropped. Under the restrictions of the heavenly Tao, it was impossible for the world of five elements to give birth to a heavenly God realm expert. Now that I have reached level 9 true God realm, my strength is the same as Great Emperor Tian Fa's. In the mortal world, I am already invincible. If I fight Great Emperor Tian Fa again, I will definitely be able to kill him easily. It's time to take revenge and completely destroy the Tian Fa tribe. Ji Tianqing gathered his thoughts and stood up slowly with his fists clenched. Let's try out the power of the great space shift first. He muttered to himself. His mind connected to the meridian of the world and used the power of the world. Swoosh! A golden divine light flashed, and he disappeared from the Golden Mountain. In the next instant, he left the core of the world, crossed hundreds of millions of miles, and appeared on a barren mountain in the north of the ruins of God. Swoosh! It was early in the morning, and the warm sun shone on the mountain peak. Suddenly, a golden light flashed, and Ji Tianqing appeared out of thin air. His feet landed on a millstone. As soon as he landed on the ground, he felt dizzy and blurred. He staggered and almost fell. This is my first time using the power of the world. The distance is too far, and my divine soul can't take it. Ji Tianqing mumbled awkwardly. He smiled bitterly and said, "Looks like I need to get used to it. When my divine soul is strong enough, I will be able to come and go freely in the world of 5 elements." With that, he took out the small golden tower and inserted his divine soul. Swoosh! The small golden tower emitted a dazzling divine light that immediately engulfed his body. Then, he entered the 9 heavens 10 absolutes tower and appeared on the 5th floor, standing in the origin divine formation. Through the origin divine formation, he returned to the 6th floor. Coincidentally, Yunyao had just come out of seclusion. She was about to leave the divine tower to check on the situation in the Luoshui divine nation. When the two of them met, Yunyao was pleasantly surprised. She quickly went up to him and asked about his well-being. "Tianqing, you're finally back. Is everything done? Your strength has greatly increased again." Ji Tianqing nodded and said with a smile, "Yes, I have refined the core of the world of 5 elements and controlled the entire world. My strength has naturally increased, and I have reached the 9th level of the true God realm. Soon, I will reach the limit of the true God realm and be called a half-step heavenly God. Yao Yao, your strength has also reached the 6th level of the true God realm. I'm sure everyone's strength has increased. The time has come. We have the ability to protect the world of 5 elements and eliminate the heaven punishers. Gather everyone for a meeting. This time, it's time for us to take the initiative to attack." Hearing that, Yunyao was shocked and gratified. She quickly nodded and said, "Okay, I'll go and inform them now." With that, she turned around and flew away happily to inform Ji Ku and the 2 children. Ji Tianqing split up with her to gather by Long, Lan Kuan, Qian Yu, and Black Dragon. In less than 15 minutes, everyone received the news and gathered around Ji Tianqing. When everyone gathered and saw each other's changes and growth, they were all very happy and excited. Chapter 2649. After exchanging some pleasantries, everyone understood each other's situation. The fact that Ji Tianqing had refined the world's core and gained control of the 5 elemental world shocked and excited everyone. After 15 minutes, when everyone had calmed down, Ji Tianqing began to talk business. "I've gathered everyone here today to make an announcement, and I hope that everyone can discuss it. The Heaven Punisher has been on the run for 8 years, and he should have recovered from his injuries and returned to his peak. We all know that the Heaven Punisher will definitely not let the 5 elemental world go. He will definitely think of a way to take revenge and steal the origin stones. However, I've already gained control of the 5 elemental world, and I can use some special methods to take it away and leave this star field. Simply put, the 5 elemental world can now move through the void, so we don't have to worry about the Heaven Punisher's revenge. Furthermore, our strength has increased greatly, and we now have 7 true God powerhouses. The time is ripe, and we have the qualifications and strength to take revenge on the Heaven Punisher. We can even exterminate them. Thus, I've decided to take the initiative and not wait for death." When Ji Tianqing announced his plan, everyone's eyes widened, and complex expressions appeared on their faces. Yunyao and Ji Ku had no objections, and they nodded without hesitation to show that they agreed with Ji Tianqing's decision. "Tianqing, I think that your plan is feasible. For so many years, we've always been on the passive side and had to be on guard against the Heaven Punisher's attacks. Now, we finally have the initiative, and we have a high chance of winning. Brother Tianqing, the Heaven Punisher has swept through all the major star fields and destroyed countless worlds and slaughtered countless lives. If we can exterminate the Heaven Punisher, not only will we be protecting the 5 elemental world, but we will also be helping Tianqing achieve his goals." Qian Yu and Black Dragon were very excited, and their eyes were filled with anticipation. We've always been bullied by the Heaven Punisher, and the Shinwu continent has suffered so much. Now, we can finally hold our heads high and kill our way back with righteousness and confidence. I need to kill 10 million, no, at least 100 million Heaven Punishers to vent the hatred in my heart. Old G, as long as you make the decision, we will support you. Didn't we cultivate in seclusion for so many years so that we could one day fight back and destroy the Heaven Punishers? Qianqian and Yaya pondered for a moment before speaking up as well. Father, since you've made this decision, you must have thought it through carefully. I believe in your judgment and am willing to follow you into battle to eradicate the Heaven Punisher race and rid the world of evil. Qianqian cupped her hands towards Ji Tianqing as she spoke with a solemn expression and a serious tone. Not only was his appearance handsome and cold, but his words and actions were also noble and elegant. He was definitely one of the top nobles in the world. Yaya blinked her big watery eyes and waved the exquisite and beautiful source stone divine sword. She said, although I don't like war and killing, the Heaven Punishers have brought disaster to the heavens and slaughtered billions of creatures. They are the greatest evil in the world. If Father wants to uphold justice on behalf of Tianqing, I am willing to do my best to accompany you. Everyone expressed their opinions, only White Dragon and Lan Kuan remained silent. Lan Kuan was taciturn by nature. Generally, he would not express his opinion when encountering such matters. However, the White Dragon had always been lively and unrestrained. He furrowed his brows in thought and remained silent. This immediately attracted everyone's attention. Ji Tianqing looked sideways at him and asked, White Dragon, why aren't you speaking? Do you have any concerns? The White Dragon nodded with a solemn expression and replied, Master, that is indeed the case. The Heaven Punishers have waged war against the 10,000 worlds and started a massacre. They deserve to die and must be eradicated. However, I am a little worried about how you will take the world of 5 elements away after merging with it. Firstly, the world of 5 elements has been sealed by the gods. It will be inconvenient for you to move about. Secondly, this star is extremely huge. With your current strength, you cannot merge it into your divine body and move about as you wish. Thirdly, the star needs a terrifying amount of energy to fly through the void. How will you obtain the energy? White Dragon's words stunned everyone for a moment, and they all quieted down. Ji Tianqing also nodded slightly and said calmly, That's right. You have hit the nail on the head. I have considered all these problems. Although the world of 5 elements has been sealed by the gods, the golden light barrier is very special. Its main function is not to seal the world of 5 elements or to restrict its movement and development. It is to protect this world. Not only can it protect the world of 5 elements from being invaded, but it can also prevent the world of 5 elements from being damaged and shrinking. As for the second point, you are right. The world of 5 elements is so huge. I have not reached the monarch god realm yet. I cannot merge it into my body and carry it around. However, I can control the power of the world to move the world of 5 elements and fly through the void. Simply put, I can use this star as a battleship and a flying divine weapon. I can drive it through the void. Ji Tianqing answered logically. The White Dragon listened and nodded. However, he was still a little worried. He continued, I understand what you mean, Master. However, there is still one problem that worries me. You can release the power of the world of 5 elements and fly through the void. It is a feasible method. However, the world of 5 elements has been destroyed and its power is limited. If it is not replenished, its power will be exhausted before it can fly out of the purple cloud star zone. The world will be even more desolate. The Heaven Punisher's nest is in another star zone far away. You have to think of a way to replenish the power of the world of 5 elements. Otherwise, it will be very difficult for us to cross a few star zones and fly to the Heaven Punisher's nest. With that said, White Dragon paused for a moment before adding, Let me give everyone a real example. In the universe of the dimension, there's a planet named Earth. That's my hometown. A terrifying solar storm broke out in the star zone where Earth star was located, destroying countless stars. Earth star was in danger. Therefore, the whole world did their best to gather all the nuclear energy and built hundreds of energy stations on Earth star. When those energy stations were all activated, they could release an extremely powerful thrust, allowing Earth star to break free from its gravitational orbit and fly into the depths of the universe to avoid the solar storm. 10 years later, Earth star finally flew out of that star zone and avoided the solar storm. However, Earth star's power was exhausted and it could not be replenished. It lost its power and floated in the void. An invisible gravitational force dragged Earth star and it kept accelerating in the void. In the end, it collided with another star like a meteor. Earth star was destroyed and billions of living beings died. I was the only survivor. I passed through the black hole formed by the collision of stars and came to this world. Later on, I met Master. After the white dragon finished speaking, everyone fell silent and looked at Ji Tianqing. Everyone finally understood that the white dragon had such a thrilling and bizarre experience. At the same time, they also understood that if this problem could not be solved, it would be very troublesome. Ji Tianqing's plan would also be affected and difficult to carry out. Chapter 2650. Everyone's hearts were filled with worry. However, Ji Tianqing smiled confidently. He smiled and waved his hand, indicating that they did not need to worry. Everyone, don't worry. If Bai Long can think of this problem, how can I not be prepared? As he said that, he looked at Bai Long with a smile and asked, Bai Long, do you still remember the divine technique that I created back then, the star attraction art? Bai Long's body trembled, and he immediately guessed something. Feeling enlightened, he quickly nodded in response. Of course I remember. Master, do you mean? Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded. That's right. The star attraction art is only the first step of the divine path cultivation. The second technique is called the star refining art. Those who have reached the divine Lord realm can cultivate the star refining art and refine an entire star to absorb energy from it. Although I have not reached the divine Lord realm, the five elements world is the main world that has existed since time immemorial. When I travel in the void, I can use the star refining art and refine other stars with the five elements world to absorb energy. In the vast starry sky, there are billions of stars. 99% of them are lifeless and useless stars. They can be used to replenish the five elements world's energy. Hearing him say this, everyone suddenly came to a realization and immediately showed an expression of relief. That's great. I guessed it long ago. Since Brother Tianqing has made this decision, he must have thought it through thoroughly. Father is indeed far-sighted. Now we have nothing to worry about. We can attack the Heaven Punisher race without worry. Using the five elements world as a battleship and controlling an entire star to travel in the starry sky. Just thinking about it makes me excited. Only old Ji has the strength and boldness to do such an earth-shattering thing. That's right. Others use battleships and flying divine artifacts to travel in the void. But he's controlling an entire star to fly. Everyone discussed among themselves. Their expressions and tones were very relaxed. Ji Tianqing did not waste any more time. He immediately ordered, since no one has any objections, this matter is settled. Cultivate in peace. I will control the five elements world to travel. I will summon you when I need you. Everyone nodded to show that they understood and then dispersed. Only Ji Tianqing, Yin Yao, and Ji Ke were left. The two women stood beside him and looked at him with concern. They asked, Tianqing, are you confident? Controlling the entire world and flying through the void not only drains a huge amount of energy, it also drains a lot of mental energy. Big brother Tianqing, don't be anxious about this. Take your time. Ji Tianqing held their hands and said with a smile, "Don't worry. I have experience with similar things. I won't make a mistake, and there won't be any danger." He comforted Yun Yao and Ji Ko before they dispelled their worries. After that, the two women continued to cultivate in the distorted spacetime while he left the divine tower alone. Shua! With a flash of white light, Ji Tianqing returned to the entrance of the Yin-Yang realm and landed on the top of a barren mountain. With a thought, his body emitted a sacred golden light and he disappeared from the spot. In the next moment, he passed through billions of miles and returned to the core of the five-elemental world, the golden ball of light. Standing on the top of the golden mountain, he released his mental energy and connected to the world meridian to move the five-elemental world. This time, I will take the entire five-elemental world and cross the endless void to seek revenge from the Heaven Punisher race. The billions of living beings in the five-elemental world won't notice anything amiss. They will never think that their lives and the survival of the five-elemental world will be in my hands. I hope that everything will go smoothly and nothing will go wrong. Ji Tianqing murmured a few words and started to control the power of the world to move the five-elemental world. Suddenly, the entire five-elemental world underwent a subtle change. The planet with a diameter of 1 billion miles released a vast amount of power of the world. It penetrated the golden god seal and ignited a sacred golden flame. Buzz! Buzz! The gigantic planet started to tremble and let out a low muffled sound that reverberated in the void. Golden flames rose from the southern half of the golden light barrier that enveloped the five-elemental world and fiercely attacked the void. A huge vortex immediately formed in the dark and cold void, setting off invisible waves of air. Whoosh! An unparalleled power finally shook the entire five-elemental world. The gigantic planet started to move slowly toward the north. Ji Tianqing had already merged with the entire world, so he could naturally sense that the five-elemental world had started to fly and was gradually increasing in speed. He was gratified, and his heart was filled with anticipation. He didn't dare to relax at all. He continued to control the other half of the five-elemental world and unleashed a vast amount of power of the world. As the power of the world became stronger, the golden flames that spewed out from the southern half of the world also became more violent and monstrous. The shining golden planet started to speed up and fly toward the depths of the void. The five-elemental world still maintained its balance and wasn't affected at all. The hundreds of races and billions of living beings living on the five continents didn't feel any discomfort. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing felt more at ease. Reality proved that his plan was feasible. The entire planet became his flying device and started to travel through the void. 10 breaths, 100 breaths, 15 minutes passed. After an hour, the flying speed of the five-elemental world had already reached a terrifying level. The shining golden planet, surrounded by soaring golden flames, dragged a long tail of flames, and rushed into the depths of the void at the speed of a heavenly god-class battleship. Even though the potential of the five-elemental world wasn't limited to this. If Ji Tianqing continued to use the power of the world, the flying speed of the five-elemental world could double. But he knew very well that doing so was very dangerous. It would accelerate the consumption of the power of the world and cause obvious changes to the five-elemental world, accelerating its decline and destruction. His journey was still very far away. For the sake of a long-term plan, he had to control the speed of the five-elemental world. Unknowingly, 3 months passed. The five-elemental world had already left its original position and advanced 1 billion miles into the depths of the void. The gigantic golden planet flickered with dazzling golden light, dragging a golden tail of flames that was millions of miles long as it sped through the starry sky. If a god saw this scene, he would definitely turn pale with fright and be dumbfounded. Now, the flying speed of the five-elemental world was very stable. In the nearby void, there weren't any stars that could release gravity. Therefore, the resistance of the five-elemental world flying in the void was very small, and the consumption of power of the world wasn't much. Ji Tianqing had been in the world core all this time, controlling the power of the world and observing the situation in the void through the entire world. If there were stars, meteorites, or void storms ahead, he would definitely avoid them in advance to avoid unnecessary danger. The plan was on the right track. In the short term, the five-elemental world was safe. Ji Tianqing's worries gradually disappeared, and his tense mind also slowly relaxed. End of this chapter. Chapter 2651. Unknowingly, a year had passed. The Five Elements world had flown 5 billion kilometers in the void. Compared to the Five Elements world's size, it had only moved 5 body lengths. After all, it was impossible to find a second star as big as the Five Elements world even if one searched the universe and the 3,000 worlds. Most of the mortal worlds had a diameter of no more than 300 million kilometers. The Five Elements world was several times bigger than those stars. During the journey, Ji Tianqing had nothing to do, so he began to clean the impurities on the golden light barrier. The golden barrier that enveloped the world of five elements was broken and cracked by the star cores and the debris of the divine warships. When the Heaven Punishers invaded, they had entered the Five Elements world through these spatial cracks and gaps. Ji Tianqing controlled the power of the world to clean up the meteorites, stars, and wreckage of the divine warships. Then, he used the power of the world to repair the holes and cracks in the golden light barrier. This way, the golden light barrier was intact and had no more holes. Even if an enemy invaded, they would not be able to find a breakthrough. The safety of the Five Elements world was further improved and strengthened. Other than that, Ji Tianqing also discovered 4 stars on the way. Those 4 stars were considered the closest stars to the Five Elements world. They were all barren and lifeless stars. Moreover, the 4 stars were very small, only a few million kilometers in diameter. Compared to the Five Elements world, it was like comparing a watermelon to a sesame seed. The Five Elements world flashed with golden light as it flew past the stars with a trail of flames. The terrifying airflow swept the 4 stars, causing them to roll for a long time in the void before stopping. Ji Tianqing did not care about those 4 tiny stars. He did not even think about using the star refining art. However, as time passed, he could clearly sense that the Five Elements world's power was beginning to decline. The year of flying had consumed a lot of the Five Elements world's power. He had to find a suitable star and devour it as soon as possible to replenish the Five Elements world's power. Otherwise, the Five Elements world would decline in 2 or 3 years. While controlling the stars to travel, Ji Tianqing also observed the surrounding void to find a suitable target. In the blink of an eye, another year had passed. The Five Elements world flew out for another 5 billion miles, truly leaving the previous void. During this process, the Five Elements world passed by 3 relatively large stars. The 3 planets were mortal worlds with billions of living beings and martial god realm experts living in them. In order not to alarm the 3 worlds, he controlled the Five Elements world to slightly change its direction and maintain a distance from the 3 worlds. Therefore, even if the martial gods of the 3 worlds saw it, they would only think it was a meteor. It has been 2 whole years. The power of the Five Elements world has been constantly weakening, and the continents have all changed. The boundless heavenly ocean surged violently, and the spiritual energy of the continents became thinner. Countless forests and grasslands were disappearing, and large numbers of birds and beasts were dying. If I still can't find a suitable star, the deterioration of the Five Elements world will accelerate. Ji Tianqing silently calculated, feeling more and more anxious. Finally, one day, 3 months later, suddenly, he saw a dark silver star appear in the void to his left. Although it was very far away, he could estimate that the diameter of the star was at least tens of millions of miles. The star was somewhat dim and lifeless. Moreover, there was no divine light shield formed by the heavenly Tao law. It was obviously a lifeless star. It's neither big nor small, and there's no life, but it contains powerful star power. This is it. Ji Tianqing made up his mind and hurriedly changed the direction of the Five Elements world's flight, flying toward that star. 4 months later, the Five Elements world gradually approached the barren star. When it was 50 million miles away from the barren star, Ji Tianqing withdrew the world power. The Five Elements world no longer spewed out golden divine flames, and its flying speed began to slow down. Although it lost the impetus of the world power, it still maintained a strong inertia and approached the barren star. Under Ji Tianqing's precise control, the Five Elements world flew near the barren star and gradually stopped. The two stars did not collide, otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. The distance between the two shrank to tens of thousands of miles under Ji Tianqing's subtle control. Compared to the Five Elements world with a diameter of 1 billion miles, this distance was already very small. Looking from a distance, the two stars seemed to be close together. After the Five Elements world stabilized, Ji Tianqing flew out. Swoosh! He easily passed through the golden light barrier, flew across tens of thousands of miles of the void, and landed on the barren star. Before devouring the barren star, he had to personally explore it and confirm that the barren star could replenish the power of the Five Elements world. Ji Tianqing landed on the surface of the barren star, standing on a vast dark silver land. This dark silver land was directly exposed to the void, cold and hard. Looking around, there were undulating mountain peaks and layers of silver rock layers. Ji Tianqing released his divine sense and invaded the dark silver land, spreading out in all directions, enveloping a radius of 90,000 miles. Soon, he found the result. This dark silver land contained an incomparably rich amount of metal and mineral resources, as well as a vast amount of star energy. He used the law of Earth again to observe the land within a radius of hundreds of thousands of miles. The result was the same. Ji Tianqing breathed a sigh of relief and revealed a satisfied smile. Very good. This star is a very suitable tonic for the Five Elements world. After saying that, he was about to use the star refining art to control the Five Elements world to devour the barren star. But at this moment, a dazzling purple-red brilliance came from the void 100,000 miles away, as fast as a stream of light. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing stopped using the art and looked over with a frown. The familiar purple-red brilliance made him vaguely guess what it was. A moment later, when the purple-red brilliance quickly approached, he gradually saw the objects in the brilliance. It was actually more than 30 mountain-sized battleships. Each battleship was more than 10,000 feet long and had a strange and ferocious appearance. They emitted crimson or purple brilliance. Ji Tianqing immediately raised his eyebrows, and a playful sneer appeared on his lips. Battleships of the Heaven Punisher race? Ha! The Heaven Punisher race's claws are long enough to reach here. It seems that after occupying the Purple Cloud planet, he has also occupied more than half of the Purple Cloud star zone in the past decade. From this point alone, Ji Tianqing could predict that the current situation in the Purple Cloud star zone must be very bad. Since he had encountered the Heaven Punisher race's fleet here, of course, he would not let it go. Moreover, he was also puzzled and curious. Why did the Heaven Punisher race's fleet not invade the other worlds but come to this barren star? End of chapter. Chapter 2652. Swoosh. Soon, the heaven-conquering fleet arrived before Ji Tianqing and stopped on the dark silver land 100 miles away. The leading warship was slightly larger and shone with a faint purple light. It was a lower true god. The other 32 black warships were ordinary high-grade martial god realm warships. Many battleships spread out and formed a huge encirclement around Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing stood there with an indifferent look on his face. His hands were behind his back and he looked calm and composed. Soon, more than 30 martial gods of the heaven-punishing race in golden armor flew out of the battleships. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. 33 heaven-defying martial gods gathered around Ji Tianqing and stared at him coldly. The leading martial god in golden armor was at LV2 True God realm. He was obviously a general or commander with a high status. The 32 martial gods in golden armor were the captains of the warships. The general in golden armor pointed at Ji Tianqing with his black broadsword and shouted arrogantly, "Kid, who are you? Why did you break into the forbidden area of my tribe? Also, what's with that golden star?" Ji Tianqing understood what was going on when he heard the general in golden armor. The other party had been on the barren planet and had rushed over to check the situation when he saw the golden five elements world approaching. Ji Tianqing asked in the language of the heaven-conquering tribe, "You don't have the right to know who I am. I have a question and you'd better answer it honestly. Why are you on this barren planet? Did the great emperor of the heaven-conquering tribe give you a mission?" The general in golden armor and the captains were stunned. They looked at each other and started to discuss among themselves. Who is that guy? How can he be so calm when he is surrounded by us? I don't know who he is. I can't see through his cultivation level. He might be an expert. He knows about our tribe's great emperor. How does he know we have a mission? It seems that the kid is not only powerful, but he also knows our tribe well. Be careful. Although many of the captains had lowered their voices and were whispering to each other. However, Ji Tianqing heard it loud and clear, and the sneer on his face became even more pronounced. The leader of the golden armored generals furrowed his brows and roared, "Brat! Don't forget your current situation. Don't be so arrogant. Now that you've fallen into our hands, your life and death are no longer up to you. You better answer my questions honestly. Perhaps I can spare your lowly life." Ji Tianqing shook his head with a sneer and sighed, "Since you insist on courting death, I will fulfill your wish. If you don't want to answer my question, then I'll get the answer myself." As his voice fell, his divine thought moved, controlling the five elements world to release dozens of world forces. Instantly, more than 60 beams of golden light shot out from the world of five elements tens of thousands of miles away, bombarding the 33 heaven-conquering battleships. Swish! Swish! Before the captains could react, more than 60 golden pillars of light tore through the void and struck the 33 warships. Bang 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 bang! A series of loud bangs reverberated in the void. The 33 warships were blasted into smithereens and were wrapped in dazzling golden light, causing a shocking storm to blow in the void. There were hundreds of heaven-conquering warriors in each warship and all of them had the strength of a martial sage. However, the heaven-conquering warriors did not have the chance to retaliate and were destroyed along with the warships. When the deafening bangs gradually dissipated, hundreds of millions of pieces of the warships were scattered on the silver ground. From the beginning to the end, Ji Tianqing stood on the ground with his hands behind his back and a sneer on his face. He did not move a finger, nor did he look back. The 33 warships and more than 3,000 heaven-conquering warriors had been destroyed. The captains and the golden-armored generals were scared out of their wits. They stood rooted to the ground, dumbfounded and horrified. Oh, my God! What? What is he? He didn't do anything and he destroyed our warships. That's terrifying. We can't afford to offend this guy. We're finished. We're all finished. After a moment of silence, many captains screamed and screamed in despair. The golden-armored general's face was as white as a sheet. He looked at Ji Tianqing in fear and asked in a trembling voice, Who are you? Do you know the consequences of going against my tribe? I advise you not to act rashly. Otherwise, my tribe's great emperor will travel across the galaxy to kill you. The golden-armored general was obviously a coward. In his fear, he could only rely on the heaven-conquering emperor. However, he had miscalculated. The golden-armored general did not expect the white-robed young man to be so terrifying. The heaven-conquering emperor. You will travel across the galaxy to kill me. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and laughed mockingly. He. I was just about to look for him. I was afraid that he wouldn't dare to come. As he spoke, he stepped into the void and charged toward the captains. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. His figure flickered continuously in the void. In the short span of a breath, he had actually twisted and turned 32 times and delivered 32 punches. In the next moment, he returned to his original spot and stood in the void with his hands behind his back. He was still calm and composed. With a cold smile on his face, it was as if he had done nothing. However, the 32 golden-armored captains were like stone sculptures, their bodies stiff and rooted to the spot. Then, there was a series of muffled explosions. The 32 golden-armored captains exploded almost at the same time. Their bodies exploded into pieces of flesh and blood that filled the sky. The blood and debris mixed together and fell on the silver ground. The pungent smell of blood filled the air. The captains of these martial god realm ships had died just like that for no apparent reason. They did not fight back or dodge. They did not even have time to scream. The golden-armored general was stunned again. His eyes were wide open as he stared at Ji Tianqing in horror. Unparalleled fear swept through his body. He felt chills all over and trembled violently. His knees softened, then he kneeled on the ground and kowtowed 3 times to Ji Tianqing, causing a series of loud thuds. When he lifted his head, his hair was disheveled. His face was covered in blood and tears. He looked extremely pathetic. His voice trembled as he shouted in fear, "Senior! I was ignorant and offended you. Please be magnanimous and let me go like a fart. As long as you are merciful, I will tell you everything I know." When Ji Tianqing saw this, he frowned and said with a strange expression, "You have no backbone. Are you really a general of the heaven-conquering tribe? I have fought with the heaven-conquering tribe for decades and killed many of their elites. However, I have never seen such a coward like you." Chapter 26:53. All along, the Heaven Punishers had been synonymous with strength and cruelty. They worshipped violence and power, and they loved war and plunder. Ji Tianqing even suspected that the words "surrender" did not exist in the dictionary of the Heaven Punishers. Regardless of whether it was the black-armored warrior or the golden-armored captain, they would rather die in battle than surrender. But now, he actually met a spineless weakling. This had broadened his horizons and increased his knowledge. It can be seen that cowardice is everywhere. No matter how powerful a race is, there will always be some cowards. Ji Tianqing muttered to himself. At this moment, a young man's voice came from the void behind him. "Master, you can't say that. The Heaven Punishers are actually very domineering. There are basically no cowards who are afraid of death. It's just that you're too strong and too ruthless. You scared that guy silly. You're already the lord of an eternal star. When you attack, you have to consider the feelings of ordinary gods. Even the imperial tutor of the Heaven Punishers would be scared witless, let alone a small general." As soon as he finished speaking, a handsome and devilishly handsome young man in a snow-white robe appeared behind Ji Tianqing. It was Bai Long. He bowed to Ji Tianqing and said with a smile, "Master, let me deal with this weakling. I don't want to dirty your hands." Ji Tianqing glanced at him and said with a smile, "You brat, why aren't you in seclusion in the divine pagoda? Why are you here to flatter your master?" Bai Long was not embarrassed. He answered with a smile, "I just broke through to the 3rd level of the true God realm. I've been in seclusion for so long that I'm about to fall ill. I came out to get some fresh air and have some fun." Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "All right, I'll let you deal with him." "Great. Thank you, Master." Bai Long was overjoyed. He quickly rolled up his sleeves and flew to the golden-armored general. The golden-armored general knelt on the ground and secretly sized him up. He was very nervous. Bai Long stretched out his left hand and pressed on the golden armored general's head. He took out a black knife the length of a chopstick and waved it in front of the golden armored general. "Dude, let me tell you a secret. Before I started practicing martial arts, I was an anatomist for a period of time." Seeing the confused look on the golden armored general's face, he explained in detail, "The person who dissects the corpses. When it was necessary for work, a corpse had to be dissected into more than 900 pieces. I learned it in 2 months, but I only worked for half a year before I was fired." "Do you know why?" The golden armored general shook his head. His eyes were filled with vigilance. White Dragon sneered and explained, "Because I like to study the limits. I always try to dissect a corpse into more than 1,000 pieces, more than 3,000 pieces, and even more than 6,000 pieces. For a non-humankind being like you, who has a special body structure, I think you can be dissected into at least 10,000 pieces. Just thinking about it makes me excited." The golden armored general immediately understood. His body stiffened, and a mournful expression appeared on his face. My lord, please, have mercy. As long as you ask. I will definitely answer." Bai Long smiled in satisfaction. He patted his face with the small origin stone knife and praised, "Very good, you know your place. Tell me, why did you come to this planet, and what mission are you carrying out?" The golden armored general did not dare to hide anything. He hurriedly replied, "My lord, I am General Yuan Qi, under the command of the Southern Expedition Marshal. 5 years ago, I led a fleet and occupied Ryuan world. Later, the great emperor of my race issued an order saying that our race was short on resources and urgently needed large amounts of divine-level ores and metals to forge weapons and warships. The great emperor ordered all the fleets to send manpower to various large worlds and planets to search for metals and ores. At the same time, the great emperor also mentioned a type of black boundless divine stone and ordered us to search for it at all costs." At this point, General Yuan Qi looked up at White Dragon. Seeing that White Dragon was smiling and had no intention of cutting his flesh, he was slightly relieved. He continued, "Ryuan world was short on resources, so I left most of the fleet to guard it and search for ores and metals. I personally led 32 warships to this star closest to the Ryuan world to plunder resources and search for boundless divine stones." At this point, Ji Tianqing and White Dragon roughly understood what was going on. Ji Tianqing sneered inwardly. Great Emperor Tian Fa suffered a setback in the Five Elements world, but he refused to give up. He fantasized that other worlds might have dawn stones as well. Haha, he did not know the secret of the Five Elements world at all. Dawn stones are divine stones with heaven-defying effects. They only exist in the main world. How could they exist in a mortal world? At this point, White Dragon asked a few more questions. The golden armored general did not dare to hide anything and answered truthfully. Now that he knew everything he needed to know, the golden armored general was no longer of any use. However, White Dragon did not intend to let him go. He toyed with the dawn stone knife in his right hand and said with a smile, "Since you have performed well, I have decided to leave you with an intact corpse. Kowtow and thank me." The golden armored general felt as if he had been struck by lightning. He kowtowed in fear and begged for mercy. However, White Dragon was unmoved. He held the dawn stone knife in his right hand and stabbed it into the general's head. An incomparably violent divine energy burst forth from the dagger, immediately destroying the golden armored general's mind and organs. Blood spurted out of the golden armored general's orifices as he fell to the ground. After twitching a few times, he breathed his last. The Heaven Punishers were very tenacious. They would not die unless they were reduced to ashes. However, White Dragon's divine power had destroyed the golden armored general's brain and internal organs. His body had become an empty shell. How could he not die? As such, White Dragon had fulfilled his promise and left the golden armored general's corpse intact. After dealing with the golden armored general, White Dragon retrieved the Dawn Stone knife and turned to look at Ji Tianqing. He smiled awkwardly and explained, "Master, please forgive me for making the decision on my own and overstepping my boundaries." Although this person knelt and begged for mercy and told me the truth, he was still a heaven punisher. He had killed countless living beings, and his hands were stained with blood. He had committed a heinous crime. This person cannot be left alive, but it is not suitable for you to attack, so I. Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "You don't need to say any more. You and I have a tacit understanding." White Dragon's eyes lit up, and he said expectantly, "If that's the case, Master, you're crossing the void this time to massacre the world, just like in my previous life." Ji Tianqing's expression was cold as he looked into the depths of the void. He nodded slightly and said, "That's right. It's not just the heaven punishers. There are also the divine beings behind the heaven punishers and the godly kings from the upper world. They will all suffer my wrath and revenge. The heavens are high, and the divine beings stand in great numbers. In this life, I will kill all of my enemies and dye the heavens red with blood." White Dragon's eyes burned with passion. His blood boiled and surged. "Good. Disciple is willing to follow Master again to conquer the heavens and kill our way back to the godly world. Those who were once our enemies will become the souls of the dead under our swords." Chapter 26:54. Exterminating the heaven punishers was easier said than done. However, it was extremely difficult to carry it out. Ji Tianqing was already mentally prepared. This plan could not be completed in 3 to 5 years. Fortunately, he had enough time to deal with the heaven punishers while controlling the 5-elemental world. The most important thing now was to devour the barren star to replenish the 5-elemental world's energy. The White Dragon returned to the 5-elemental world and entered the Divine Pagoda to cultivate. Ji Tianqing controlled the 5-elemental world and released vast and mighty world energy. Swoosh! 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 Instantly, 90,000 golden pillars of light flew out of the 5-elemental world and connected to the barren star like densely packed tentacles. The 90,000 golden tentacles plunged deep into the barren star and started to absorb the star energy. The barren star started to tremble. The dark silver ground quickly cracked and collapsed. The endless star energy was like a silver stream of water that flowed into the 5-elemental world through the 90,000 tentacles. It was not just the star energy. Even the metal ores in the barren star were devoured by the 5-elemental world. As time passed, the 5-elemental world was replenished and started to return to normal. The strange phenomena in the continents and the sky sea also quickly calmed down. The barren star started to shrink, and its power continued to weaken. The ground on the surface of the barren star was fragmented and quickly eroded. The useless rocks and sand turned into dust and powder that filled the sky and scattered in the void. 1 day, 5 days, 10 days, half a month passed. After 40 days, the barren star had clearly shrunk. 1/3 of it had been devoured. After 3 months, the barren star had shrunk again. More than half of its power had been lost. After 5 months, the barren star had shrunk by 80%. Its diameter was only 2 million miles. At that moment, the barren star's power had been devoured by the 5-elemental world. The entire star had become dim and lifeless, leaving behind only the useless sand and rocks. It was impossible for such a barren star to survive. At most, in another 100 years, the entire barren star would be eroded. It would turn into endless dust and disappear into the void. The barren star was completely destroyed. However, the 5-elemental world had devoured a vast amount of power. Not only had it replenished the power it had used in the past 2 years, but it also had a lot more. The power of the elemental world would increase by a lot, and the flying speed and time would also increase greatly. After star devouring ended, Ji Tianqing controlled the 5 elements world and continued flying in the void. Shwa! Golden divine flames erupted from the five elements world, erupting with terrifying power, pushing it forward in the void. This time, Ji Tianqing was in no hurry to go to Zixiao Star. He decided to make a trip to the Ryuan world and get rid of the Heaven Punisher there. In any case, Ryuan world was not far from here. They could reach it in half a month. Since he was passing by this place, he might as well destroy some of the heaven-destroying fleets and save the Ryuan world. To deal with the heaven-punishing race, one had to accumulate many little drops into an ocean and continuously eat away at the heaven-punishing fleet. If they directly charged into the heaven-punishing clan's lair, it would be hard to predict who would win. 14 days later, the five elements world flew near the Ryuan world and stopped. Yun Yao and Ji Ke stayed in the divine pagoda while the others followed him into the Ryuan world to kill the heaven destroyers. Bai Long, Qian Yu, and He Long were all warlike and were most interested in this kind of thing. Even Chen Chen and Ye were determined to follow Ji Tianqing into battle. Ji Tianqing had originally refused. The two children were still young and had not reached the true immortal realm. However, Bai Long persuaded him, Master, junior brother Wuhan and junior sister Wushuang have extraordinary talents. They are unparalleled geniuses. Even though they are only level 8 martial gods, their combat strength is very strong. They are said to be invincible among those below the true immortal realm. Moreover, they have been living in the divine pagoda since they were young. They have not experienced the hardships and difficulties of the martial path, nor have they experienced real battles. They are like flowers in a greenhouse. They have strength and skills, but they have no experience in battle. In the future, they will definitely follow you to conquer the world and conquer the 10,000 realms. If you don't let them gain experience now, when will you wait? The heaven punishers in the Ryuan world are all martial gods and martial sages. They will not be a threat to them. Moreover, we will all protect them. How can we let them be in danger? When Chen Chen and Ye heard this, they nodded in agreement. Father, senior brother Bai Long is right. I have studied the world extensively and know thousands of martial techniques and divine techniques, but they are all armchair strategists. I have no real battle experience. Now, we have traversed the void and fought everywhere. This is the best opportunity for us to gain experience. Ji Wuhan cupped his hands at Ji Tianqing and said seriously. Ji Wushuang also nodded in agreement and said, Father, Mother always said that you and her have walked a rough path together, experiencing who knows how many life and death crises. It is because of this that you were able to rise from the storm and become experts who can laugh at the world. Brother and I will eventually grow up. You and Mother can protect us for a while, but you cannot protect us forever. We have to grow up and learn to face the storm ourselves. When he heard this, Ji Tianqing revealed a gratified smile. He nodded and said, Chen Chen, Ye, I am very gratified that you have both grown up. Since you want to gain experience, I will not stop you. You can go without worries. After this matter was discussed, Ji Tianqing led everyone and the few divine beasts into Ryuan world. Ji Tianqing rode the black dragon, Lan Kuan carried the white dragon, Qian Yu carried Ji Wuhan, and the glazed fire dragon carried Ji Wushuang. For countless years, the glazed fire dragon had been following Yun Yao and cultivating in seclusion in the distorted spacetime. It knew that its strength was weak and would drag everyone down, so it cultivated desperately and raised its strength at all costs. As a result, it was unknown and rarely showed its face in these years. Today, it had reached the first level of the true God realm with Yun Yao's help. It felt that it was strong enough and could finally leave the mountain. That was why it followed Ji Wushuang. Not only now, but it would also follow Ji Wushuang in the future. Yun Yao and Ji Tianqing were happy to see this happen. After all, Yun Yao was very strong and did not need the glazed fire dragon's help. Ji Wushuang was still a little girl and did not have any combat experience. With the glazed fire dragon's guidance and care, everyone could be at ease. Not long after, everyone entered Ruyuan world. Ji Tianqing used a little trick and found the heaven-punishing divine palace built by the heaven-punishing tribe. This heaven-punishing divine palace hung high in the vast eastern sea. It was General Yuan Qi's residence and also the place where the Ruyuan world ruled. Tens of thousands of heaven-punishing warriors and dozens of captains were scattered across the 4 continents and firmly controlled Ruyuan world. The resources and treasures they plundered from the various continents would be sent to the heaven-punishing divine palace at regular intervals. As a result, the heaven-punishing divine palace had accumulated a huge amount of resources and treasures. There was also a large number of heaven-punishing elites guarding it. Chapter 26:55. Ji Tianqing led the group and charged into the heaven-punishing divine palace. Sui Meng. There were more than 800 black-armored soldiers and 12 golden-armored captains guarding the heaven-punishing divine palace. The most powerful person was the vice-general of the fleet who had reached the 8th level of the martial god realm. These people could not stop the group's attack at all. After fighting for 15 minutes, more than 500 black-armored soldiers and 7 golden-armored captains were killed. Even the most powerful vice-general was severely injured by Ji Tianqing's punch. After that, Ji Tianqing stopped attacking. He used a powerful divine ability to set up a ceiling formation that enveloped the entire heaven-punishing divine palace. In this way, no one could escape from the heaven-punishing divine palace. Without his permission, even the communication jade slips could not be sent out. After doing this, he stood at the peak of the heaven-punishing divine palace and watched the battle calmly. Inside the heaven-punishing divine palace, Bai Long, Qian Yu, Black Dragon, Ji Wuhan, and Ji Wushuang were fighting bravely. Of course, Bai Long was being cautious. He did not use his full strength in case he killed all the experts of the heaven-punishing divine palace. While he pretended to attack, he was secretly observing Ji Wuhan and Ji Wushuang. This was the first time the siblings were fighting against the heaven-punishing divine palace, so they were very serious and cautious. The two of them held the Source Stone divine sword and kept using their divine skills to fight against the heaven-punishing divine palace. Their experiences with swords and sabers, as well as bloody battles, allowed them to grow quickly and accumulate combat experience. They tested the results of their cultivation through actual combat, constantly modifying and perfecting their divine skills and sword techniques. They improved rapidly. Half an hour later, all the black-armored soldiers were killed. Only the 5 golden-armored captains and the vice-general were left. They were all severely injured. At this time, Ji Wuhan and Ji Wushuang requested that they take care of the 6 experts of the heaven-punishing divine palace. Bai Long, Qian Yu, Black Dragon, and the Glazed Fire Dragon retreated from the battle and watched from the sidelines to support the siblings. An intense and exciting battle immediately unfolded. Ji Wuhan and Ji Wushuang joined forces to deal with the 6 heaven-punishing divine palaces fearlessly. The two of them cooperated well, advancing and retreating in an orderly manner. All kinds of sword arts and divine abilities were at their fingertips, and they used them very skillfully. As a result, the two of them had the upper hand. They had been suppressing the 6 heaven-defying martial gods and forcing them to back off. In just 15 minutes, the 5 captains were killed by the two of them. The remaining deputy general was also severely injured by the two of them and was on the verge of death. Finally, Ji Wuhan sent the deputy general flying with a single slash of his sword, cutting off half of his body. His figure flashed and he was about to chase after the deputy general and kill him with his sword. At this moment, Ji Tianqing, who had been watching the battle from the top of the divine palace, suddenly spoke. "Chen, stop." Ji Wuhan had already appeared in front of the deputy general, and the divine sword in his hand had already reached the top of his head. But in that split second, he stopped without hesitation and drew back his divine sword. Ji Wuhan turned to look at the peak of the divine palace. He bowed to Ji Tianqing and said, "Father, please instruct me." Ji Tianqing nodded. He strode across the sky and landed on the plaza. He came to Ji Wuhan's side and looked down at the severely injured and dying deputy general. He said, "Let him live for now. Father has other plans." Ji Wuhan was exceptionally intelligent. He immediately guessed his father's intentions and bowed before taking his leave. The battle ended. Ji Tianqing looked at the deputy general covered in blood and ordered, "In your name, send out a communication jade slip and summon all the captains and warriors back." Hearing this, the deputy general's body stiffened. Anger and hatred surged in his eyes. You're so vicious. I'd rather die than obey. Don't even think about getting your way." Ji Tianqing was too lazy to talk nonsense. He gave Bai Long a look. Bai Long immediately understood. He walked to the deputy general with a cold smile on his face. He took out a small boning knife forged from an origin stone and began to torture him. Skinning, pulling out tendons, and boning were originally extremely cruel punishments. They were often accompanied by bloody scenes that made people unable to look at them directly. However, in Bai Long's hands, these things became like an art. His torture techniques had been brought to the point of perfection. His movements were agile and elegant, as smooth as flowing water. The skin that was peeled off, the tendons that were pulled out, and the bones that were picked out were all intact. The most terrifying thing was that Bai Long's eyes and expression were extremely focused. It didn't seem like he was carrying out a punishment, but more like he was carving wood or jade. The deputy general suffered inhumane pain and torture. He fainted several times, but was awakened by the stimulation. He had fallen into Bai Long's hands. Even death had become an extravagant hope. No matter how tenacious his willpower was, it couldn't withstand such devastation and gradually collapsed. At this moment, Bai Long's eyes were focused on him. He muttered to himself, "A bone sculpture of two dragons playing with a pearl? Or a flower pot of a flood dragon emerging from the sea? Otherwise, I can carve a painting of all living beings worshipping the gods and give it to master as a carpet. That's not bad." Not far away, Ji Tianqing, Ji Wuhan, and Ji Wushuang all revealed a somewhat strange expression. Especially Ji Tianqing. Her small hands were cold as she held on to Ji Tianqing's arm in fear. She didn't dare to look at Bai Long's movements. It was too terrifying. Bai Long's focused and serious expression formed a strong contrast with his torturing movements. It sent chills down one's spine. When the deputy general heard this, his eyes widened in horror. His willpower was completely swallowed by fear. He didn't dare to resist anymore. He hurriedly kowtowed and begged for mercy. He cried out hoarsely, "Let me go. I'm begging you, I'm willing to send a message. I only ask that you give me a quick death." As he spoke, he took out a few communication jade slips with trembling hands and sent messages to the heaven punishers of the 4 continents. His goal was achieved. Bai Long put away the knife with a smile and blasted the deputy general into pieces with a punch. "Done. Pack up." He clapped his hands nonchalantly and returned to his usual carefree and unrestrained appearance. However, everyone had seen his terrifying methods. When they saw him change his attitude so easily, they felt their scalps go numb. When Bai Long walked toward Ji Tianqing, Ji Wushuang subconsciously took 2 steps back and hid behind Ji Tianqing. She stared at Bai Long with her big eyes. Bai Long scratched his head awkwardly and said with a shy smile, "Little junior sister, what are you doing? Don't you recognize your eldest senior brother?" Ji Wushuang pouted and said angrily, "Humph. Eldest senior brother, you're usually so carefree and easygoing. I didn't expect you to be an executioner. My brother and I won't play with you anymore. You pervert, big devil." Bai Long was even more embarrassed. He explained with a smile, "Little junior sister, don't misunderstand. How can your eldest senior brother be a big devil? A great man once said that you should treat your own people as warm as spring and treat your enemies as cold as winter. Ji Wuxuang didn't listen to his explanation. She pulled Ji Wuhan and turned to leave. Bai Long stood there awkwardly and swallowed the rest of his words. Ji Tianqing couldn't help but laugh. Serves you right. Who asked you to show off in front of the children? Now you've left them with psychological trauma. Let's see how you're going to maintain your image in the future. Bai Long immediately cried and said, Master, I'm innocent. Chapter 2656. To them, Bai Long's act of destroying a heaven punisher was not considered excessive. After all, they were all experts who had walked through mountains of corpses and seas of blood. Their hands were stained with blood and had slaughtered millions of lives, let alone a heaven punisher. In this martial Tao world where the strong preyed on the weak, all cultivators had no other choice. A cultivator's fate was to kill or be killed. However, Ji Wuhan and Ji Wuxuang were still very young and had not experienced any bloodshed. This was the first time they had seen such a scene, and it was done by their eldest senior brother personally. It was normal for them to be unable to accept it. After this small interlude ended, everyone went about their duties and carried out the next step of the plan. Bai Long brought Lan Kuan, Xianyu, Black Dragon, and the glazed fire dragon to quickly search through the heaven-punishing divine palace's treasury. They transported countless resources and treasures to the Five Elements world and stored them in the divine pagoda. Ji Tianqing and his two sons remained in the heaven-punishing divine palace, waiting for the heaven punishers to return from the various continents. 2 days later, all the resources and treasures in the heaven-punishing divine palace had been emptied. 3 days later, the heaven-punishing battleships returned one after another. When those battleships entered the heaven-punishing divine palace, what awaited them was a merciless slaughter. Ji Tianqing presided over the heaven-punishing divine palace and did not need to do anything. Bai Long, the 4 divine beasts, Ji Wuhan, Ji Wuxuang, and the others easily dealt with those battleships. In the next 5 days, they successively destroyed more than 50 battleships. 54 golden armor captains and more than 4,000 black armor warriors were all smashed to pieces. After the battle ended, Ji Tianqing and the others left. In the Ryuan world, only 2 or 3 golden armor warriors and a few hundred black armor warriors were left. They were scattered across the various continents. Ji Tianqing did not have the time to kill them one by one. However, the billions of cultivators and leaders of the Ryuan world would not forgive them. A day later, the Five Elements world burst out with golden flames and continued to fly into the depths of the void. For the next 3 years, the Five Elements world continued to roam the void. In the process, Ji Tianqing and the others had rescued another 4 worlds, killing more than 300 captains of the heaven-conquering fleet and more than 30,000 heaven-conquering warriors. Of course, they also obtained a huge amount of cultivation resources and treasures. To Ji Tianqing, the people and divine beasts around him had already reached the true God realm. Even the weakest 2 children were at the peak of the martial God realm. They were not far from the true God realm. Therefore, he only wanted deity-level pills, ores, metals, and various other resources. Not only was he not interested in any cultivation resources below the divine level, he had no use for them at all. Not to mention, everyone had relied on origin stones to cultivate and increase their strength. The effects were very obvious. The god-level resources they had plundered could only be used as support. Most of them were used to concoct pills, refine tools, create talismans, and set up formations. After saving the 4 worlds, Ji Tianqing found 2 more barren planets and devoured them. The 2 lifeless planets were both more than 10 million miles in diameter. It contained powerful star energy, as well as incomparably rich resources and ores. After the Five Elements world devoured the 2 stars, not only was its power replenished, but it also increased its own power by 20%. In this way, the Five Elements world was also quietly growing and expanding. After the world energy became stronger, the spiritual chi and divine power of heaven and earth also began to increase. This caused the living beings in the 5 continents and the endless sky ocean to enter an era of rapid growth and strength. The martial Tao developed faster, and geniuses and experts continued to emerge. Such a prosperous scene filled Ji Tianqing with hope for the future of the 5 elements world. If I travel in the void for 1,000 years and devour thousands of stars to replenish the 5 elements world's power, the 5 elements world would grow by 10 times. The 5 elements world will definitely grow dozens of times. I wonder if it can be restored to the main world. Of course, this was only his imagination. He also understood that it was not easy to restore the 5 elements world to the main world. He had merged with the 5 elements world. He had to at least recover to the Divine King realm to restore the 5 elements world to its peak. In the blink of an eye, 3 years had passed. Just 2 months after the 4th year, the 5 elements world was close to the purple cloud planet. After more than 10 years, Ji Tianqing was back again. This time, it was completely different from the past. When the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher attacked, he was the loser and was forced to flee the purple cloud planet. But now, he had seized the initiative and openly slaughtered his way back. He had guessed that the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher was not on the purple cloud planet. However, he believed that the purple cloud planet was the core of the purple cloud planet. The great Emperor of Heaven Punisher would definitely send a large number of troops to guard it. This time, he had returned not only to save the purple cloud planet but also to destroy the main force of the Heaven Punishing Fleet. At the same time, he had to find a way to find out the exact location of the Heaven Punisher's base. The continents on the purple cloud planet were very peaceful. For 15 years, the purple cloud planet had been under the rule of the Heaven Punisher. The tens of billions of living beings on the 5 continents had become the slaves of the Heaven Punisher. They lived in darkness and misery. Under the command of the Heaven Punisher, they had to work day and night to extract resources for the Heaven Punisher and empty the resources of the continents. The Heaven Punisher fleet that guarded the 5 continents was the old subordinates of the Southern Expedition Marshal. Back then, the Southern Expedition Marshal had been killed by Ji Tianqing. Almost half of the Southern Expedition fleet's main force had been destroyed. However, there were still more than 100 battleships and more than 15,000 Heaven Punisher soldiers scattered on the planets around the purple cloud planet. After the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher had arrived, he had issued the Heaven Punisher order and gathered the old subordinates of the Southern Expedition Marshal to occupy the purple cloud planet. Now, the Heaven Punisher had built a magnificent Heaven Punisher divine palace in the vast sea of clouds. Under the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher's instructions, the most powerful General Meng He had been promoted to the position of the Southern Expedition Marshal temporarily. After the great Emperor of Heaven Punisher had left, General Meng He had stayed in the divine palace and controlled the entire purple cloud planet. He had great ambitions, and not only had he used his cruel tyranny to enslave the purple cloud planet, he had also chosen thousands of martial arts top powers from the 5 continents. General Meng He had used the Heaven Punisher's secret technique to refine thousands of martial artists into puppets. He had made them reach the martial sage realm and they had become the black armor warriors. Then, he had sent out many battleships to invade the worlds around the purple cloud planet. More than 10 years had passed and the 3 planets around the purple cloud planet had fallen under his control. General Meng He's forces had grown stronger and the resources and treasures that he had plundered from various places had piled up into a mountain in the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace. He had decided to spend a few decades to raise his strength to rank 5 True God Realm. He had also expanded the number of battleships under his command to more than 800 battleships. Even if he could not restore the Southern Expedition Fleet to its peak, he wanted to become the Southern Expedition Marshal. It was a pity that as the 5 Elements realm approached, General Meng He's plan had been ruined. Chapter 2657. When they were 30 million miles away from Purple Cloud Planet, the 5 Elements world stopped. Then, Ji Tianqing took out the Tianqing battleship and brought everyone to Purple Cloud Planet. As usual, Yin Yao and Ji Ke stayed behind to guard the Five Elements world in case anything happened. White Dragon, Ji Wuhan, Ji Wushuang, Blue Kuan, Qian Yu, Black Dragon, and the Glazed Fire Dragon all followed Ji Tianqing. The Tianqing battleship flew for 10 days and arrived at Purple Cloud Planet. The dazzling purple divine light barrier still enveloped the entire Purple Cloud Planet and shone brightly in the void. Ji Tianqing took out the Burial of Heaven sword and slashed open the divine light barrier, creating a huge crack. Then, the Tianqing battleship passed through the crack and entered Purple Cloud Planet. During the journey, Ji Tianqing used the law of Earth to investigate the situation of the Zero Mainland. In just 3 days, he had thoroughly investigated the situation of the Zero Mainland. Only then did he know that the heaven-punishing Great Emperor was not on Purple Cloud Planet. Now, it was General Meng He and his fleet that ruled the 5 mainlands of Purple Cloud Planet. Above the endless sea of clouds, General Meng He had built a new divine palace near the heaven-punishing divine palace. Ji Tianqing sneered when he heard this news. Ha! The heaven-punishing race is really forgetful. They actually built another divine palace in the sea of clouds. Looks like the situation from back then is going to repeat itself. Of course, the situation this time was different from back then. Back then, he had used the opportunity of the myriad countries' God assembly to disguise himself as a heaven-punishing guard and sneak into the heaven-punishing divine palace. This time, he did not need to go through so much trouble. He directly drove the Tianqing battleship to the heaven-punishing divine palace. Half a day later, the Tianqing battleship left a long white trail behind it as it sped through the sea of clouds and arrived outside the heaven-punishing divine palace. Although they were still a few hundred miles away, Ji Tianqing, White Dragon, and the others saw a magnificent palace in the sea of clouds. The palace was sparkling with a dazzling purple light, and was protected by a tens of miles in radius purple light screen. When the Tianqing battleship got closer, everyone could see clearly that there were many black armored guards walking around the heaven-punishing divine palace. It was a very tight security. "Master, what plans do you have?" Bai Long, who was steering the warship, turned to Ji Tianqing and asked for instructions. Ji Tianqing said expressionlessly, "No, let's just kill our way in." "All right." Bai Long answered happily. He pushed the Tianqing battleship's speed to the max and slammed it into heaven-punishing God Palace. 2 breaths later, the pitch-black Tianqing battleship, which was burning with dazzling golden divine flames, crashed into the purple light shield. Boom! A deafening explosion resounded throughout the universe. The heaven-punishing divine palace, which was 50 miles wide, started to shake violently. Violent shockwaves mixed with purple light fragments spread out in all directions, covering the vast sea of clouds. This sudden change alarmed the entire heaven-punishing divine palace. More than a dozen patrol teams immediately pulled out their weapons and rushed to the plaza in front of the heaven-punishing divine palace. When more than 100 black armored guards arrived at the plaza, they saw that the pitch-black battleship had disappeared. 4 strange-looking cultivators and 4 huge divine beasts stood on the plaza, which was paved with golden divine stones. "Who are you? How dare you barge into our heaven-punishing divine palace? Do you want to die? What are you waiting for? Kill them!" The captains of the guards roared furiously as they brandished their swords and sabers to attack. Instantly, more than 100 black armored guards waved their weapons and sent out saber lights and sword shadows that covered the sky. The saber lights and sword shadows poured down like a torrential rain, about to drown the 4 people and 4 divine beasts. At this moment, a handsome young man in snow-white robes and a young girl in a blue dress charged out with black divine swords in their hands. Sky gap flowing light. Missing moon returning star sword. The young man and the young lady shouted angrily as they waved their swords and executed exquisite sword techniques. They sent out 9 sword lights that could split the heavens and earth and more than 60 icy blue sword lights. Bam! 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 The attacks of the black armored guards were destroyed by the sword lights. In the next instant, many black armored guards were swept up by the sword lights and were smashed into pieces. The young man in white and the young lady in blue took 2 steps forward and waved their divine swords again. Sky Thunder Hurricane Sword. Half Moon Ice Sealing Sword. Suddenly, 18 dazzling sword lights, accompanied by rolling thunder, wind, and ice, poured down from the sky. Boom! 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 The surviving black armored guards were killed on the spot. The plaza quieted down. The young man in white and the young lady in blue put away their divine swords and returned to the crowd calmly. Ji Tianqing smiled. Bai Long, Qian Yu, Hei Long, and the glazed fiery dragon applauded. After 2 years of training, Chen Chen and Yaya have accumulated some experience. Now, their control of their moves, strength, and speed has reached a certain level. They have the demeanor of a peak martial god. Ji Tianqing commented with a smile on his face. At this moment, a group of overlords in golden armor flew through the gate and landed on the square. There was a total of 24 martial god realm captains in the fleet. They were all wearing golden armor and holding sabers, spears, swords, and halberds in their hands. The leader was a middle-aged man in golden armor and a purple robe. He was burly and his face was majestic. His strength had reached LV4 true god realm. There was no doubt that he was General Meng He, the ruler of Purple Cloud Star. Of course, the experts in Purple Cloud Star all called him Marshal Meng He. Who are you? How dare you go against the Heaven Punisher tribe? Have you thought about how you are going to die? Marshal Meng He placed his left hand behind his back and held a black sword in his right hand. He pointed at Ji Tianqing and the others and shouted angrily. Ji Tianqing ignored him and ordered Bai Long and the 4 spiritual beasts beside him, go and guard the perimeter of the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace. Do not let anyone escape. Bai Long and the 4 spiritual beasts acknowledged the order and scattered to various parts of the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace. They worked together to set up a true god array and quickly sealed the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace. Seeing this, Great General Meng He and the 20 or so captains of the Heaven Punishing Fleet all wore confused and angry expressions. Bastard! Ben Shui is talking to you. If you don't answer, I will tear you into pieces. What are those guys doing? Setting up an array? Are they afraid that we will escape from the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace? Ha ha ha. This is too funny. Are those guys crazy? Many captains discussed among themselves and looked at Ji Tianqing and the others as though they were looking at fools. Ji Tianqing's face was still cold as he looked at Marshal Meng He calmly and said, I will give you a chance. Immediately summon the Heaven Punisher fleet on the 5 continents. Ask them to hurry back to the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace and save your worthless life. I will give you 3 days to gather your men so that I can deal with all of you at once and not waste time. Chapter 2658. What a boastful man! Meng Heyuan laughed suavely and bellowed with a ferocious expression. The 20-odd golden-armored captains were also stunned for a moment before bursting into laughter. Ha ha ha. What did that guy just say? Did I hear wrongly? He's too arrogant. He actually asked the marshal to gather his men so that he can take care of them all at once. Tisk tsk tsk. Where did this lunatic come from? Is he tired of living? I dare to bet that this guy will be in big trouble if he falls into the marshal's hands. How many pieces do you think the marshal will cut him into before he can vent his anger? Everyone had a gloating, ferocious, and cruel expression on their faces. At this time, more than 400 heaven-punishing guards in black armor rushed to the square from all directions. Marshal Meng He pointed his sword at Ji Tianqing and bellowed contemptuously, "Little bastard, you must have lost your mind. How dare you spout such nonsense in front of Benshui? No matter which world you came from, no matter what your motive is, Benshui will grind your bones to dust as a warning to others." As his voice fell, he waved the heavy sword in his hand and ordered the black-armored guards, "Capture them for this marshal. Remember to keep them alive." Over 400 black-armored guards let out a thunderous roar, one after another, they leaped into the air, slashing and thrusting their swords and saber lights that blotted out the sky and covered the earth, rushing towards Ji Tianqing and his son. Ji Tianqing's expression did not change in the face of the overwhelming crimson light blades and the siege of the 400 black-armored guards. He did not even bother to look at the guards. His eyes were fixed on Marshal Meng He, who was 10 miles away. When the light blades were about to fall, he raised his arms and waved his wide sleeves in all directions, shooting out a divine light that covered the sky. Swoosh! Swoosh! The dazzling golden divine light spread in all directions like a canopy. Following that, a series of muffled explosions resounded throughout the world. The crimson light blades that covered the sky were instantly shattered by the golden canopy. As for the 400 black-armored guards, they were instantly smashed into pieces by the golden canopy. They turned into powder and blood that scattered in the sky. If the golden divine light was the scorching sun, then the 400 black-armored guards were the ice and snow. Under the scorching sun, the ice and snow melted instantly. In just 2 short breaths, the 400 black-armored guards had all disappeared. Only a rain of blood, swords, and scraps of armor were left as they fell onto the square. Such a shocking scene caused Ji Wuhan and Ji Wushuang to stare with their eyes wide open, and they revealed dense shock and adoration in their eyes. It was extremely rare for them to see Ji Tianqing fight against powerful enemies. Only now did they know that their father was actually so powerful. In the blink of an eye, more than 400 martial sages. This was a true god. Marshal Meng He and the 24 golden-armored generals were also dumbfounded. Their bodies stiffened on the spot as if they had been petrified. Everyone's faces were filled with shock, and their hearts were filled with fear and shock. If they had not seen it with their own eyes, they would not have dared to believe that this was real. The other party had only waved his sleeves, and more than 400 guards had been destroyed. Not even their corpses were left. How terrifying was this power? Perhaps only the heaven-punishing emperor could have such means in the entire 3,000 worlds. The 24 captains started to tremble. Fear and the intention to retreat appeared in their eyes. Marshal Meng He, who was the leader, also felt his throat dry up and his legs turn to jelly. He swallowed his saliva and asked in a hoarse and trembling voice, "Who are you? Why are you going against my race? Do you know that my race has already conquered the universe and dominated the 5 major star zones?" Ji Tianqing said expressionlessly, "My surname is Tianqing. I once saved the Purple Cloud planet and was worshipped as the Purple Cloud planet's master." Ji Tianqing. Marshal Meng He's body stiffened again. He exclaimed in shock, "You are the human who killed the Southern Expedition Marshal?" He was once a fierce general under the Southern Expedition Marshal. His seniority and status were higher than General Dragon subduing. Therefore, he had heard of Ji Tianqing killing the Southern Expedition Marshal. Ji Tianqing's lips curled into a cold smile. He said in a playful tone, "Since you have heard of my deeds, you should know what you should do." Marshal Meng He's body trembled. Fear flashed in his eyes, and his expression was uncertain. He was hesitating and struggling in his heart. "You asked me to gather all the captains and warriors at the heaven-punishing divine palace. Do you want to catch them all in one go?" He finally mustered up the courage to ask the question in his heart. Ji Tianqing did not deny it. He said with a smile, "That's right. You are a smart person. Marshal Meng he was silent for a while before he nodded with difficulty. All right, I will listen to your orders. However, I have a request. Ji Tianqing shook his head gently and said indifferently, a prisoner has no right to talk about requests. The humiliation caused Marshal Meng he's face to turn red. His eyes were filled with shame and anger. However, he suppressed his anger and slowly took out a few communication jade slips and started to send messages. Seeing this, the expressions of the more than 20 golden-armored captains changed. Many of them tried to dissuade him. No. Marshal Meng He, you can't do this. Stop. You're going to kill everyone. Marshal. We have more people. Why should we be afraid of him? At most, we will fight it out with him and perish together. We are the warriors of the heaven-punishing race. We would rather die than surrender. Marshal, how can you throw away the integrity of our race? However, Marshal Meng he turned a deaf ear to everyone's dissuasion. Soon, he finished making a few communication jade slips and waved his hand to send them out. Swish. 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 6 communication jade slips flew into the sky, passed through the purple light barrier, and disappeared into the horizon. Marshal Meng he looked up at the 6 communication jade slips flying away. An undetectable sneer flashed across his eyes. Clearly, he was not really afraid. Neither was he really going to surrender. Not only had he sent a message to the captains of the 5 continents, but he had also sent a message to the heaven-punishing emperor. Humph. Arrogant human brat, do you think Ben Shui will give in so easily? Ben Shui not only sent the message to the heaven-punishing emperor, but he also left a backup plan in the divine palace. Humph. As long as Ben Shui buys time for you, you will soon be in despair. Ha ha ha. Marshal Meng he lowered his head and laughed coldly in his heart. However, Ji Tianqing's voice rang out again. Actually, I wanted you to send a message to the heaven-punishing emperor as well. If he can come to the purple cloud planet, then I don't have to cross the void and go to the distant star region to find him. Ji Tianqing shook his head calmly and said regretfully, unfortunately, your life is too cheap. It is not worth it for him to cross the void to save you. Moreover, if he knows that I am the one who wants to kill you, he will not dare to save you. Hearing this, Marshal Meng he's body stiffened. The sneer in his eyes froze. He raised his head and looked at Ji Tianqing in shock. He could not help but ask, what do you mean? Ji Tianqing chuckled. You will understand soon enough. Chapter 2659. Ji Tianqing's words caused Marshal Meng he to be bewildered. He had a bad feeling about this. He could roughly guess why Ji Tianqing was so fearless and arrogant. It was most likely because Ji Tianqing was no weaker than the Heaven Punisher Great Emperor. Great General Meng he felt a chill run down his spine, and his heart fell into an ice cellar. He couldn't help but think, if his strength is really on par with the Great Emperor, will the trump card I left in the Divine Palace still be useful? At this moment, the 24 captains of the golden-armored ships began to discuss again, roaring excitedly. Great General! Don't be scared by him. The Great Emperor is the most powerful person in the world. Unless a god descends, no one can defeat him. Don't hesitate anymore. Don't we have a trump card? Let's fight it out with him. Great General, hurry up and summon the void spirit beasts and heavenly battle puppets. Let's kill Ji Tianqing together. Hearing the roars of the many captains, Ji Tianqing immediately showed an interested smile. Void spirit beasts. Heavenly battle puppets. Great General Meng he's expression changed, and his body seemed to have turned to stone. His expression became extremely ugly as he slowly turned to glare at the captains. It was obvious that he had hidden a trump card in the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace. He had wanted to pretend to surrender to lower Ji Tianqing's guard. Then, he would try to lure Ji Tianqing into the divine palace and find a chance to launch a sneak attack. Now, it seemed like his plan had been foiled before it could even take shape. It was all because of those captains who couldn't keep their cool. The more great General Meng he thought about it, the angrier he became. If it weren't for Ji Tianqing's presence, he really wanted to pull out those gossipy captains and beat them up. But now, the void spirit beasts and heavenly battle puppets had been exposed. It was too late for him to say anything. Since that was the case, he might as well reveal his true colors and stop pretending to surrender. His bowing and trembling appearance disappeared, and he once again puffed out his chest and raised his head, revealing a sinister and cold smile. He. Ji Tianqing, since you've heard it, Ben Shuai won't hide it anymore. Ben Shuai wanted to play with you before, but it seems like there's no need for that now. With that, Marshal Meng he raised his right hand confidently and snapped his fingers. Come out. As soon as he said that, the heaven-punishing divine palace was filled with the roar of a beast. In the depths of the divine palace, there was a powerful divine formation, and a mysterious void spirit beast was sleeping within it. 2 martial god realm captains watched over the void spirit beast day and night. In addition, there were 34 golden-armored heavenly battle puppets of different appearances hidden in another palace. Upon hearing Marshal Meng He's shout, the 2 captains immediately opened up the divine formation and released the ferocious void spirit beasts. In another palace, the 34 heavenly battle puppets woke up one after another. They opened their scarlet eyes and roared as they charged towards the plaza in front of the palace. Shwa! A pitch-black shadow streaked across the sky and landed on the plaza. This black shadow, which was hundreds of feet long and as tall as a small mountain, stomped on the golden stone floor with a loud rumble, causing the entire palace to shake. Everyone's gaze landed on this huge black beast that seemed both real and illusory at the same time. It was a huge, pitch-black beast that looked like a wolf or a tiger. It had a large, bloody mouth that was filled with sharp fangs. Black void divine flames kept dripping from its mouth. 2 rows of sharp, knife-like bone spurs grew on its sturdy and muscular back. Void divine flames burned on its 4 thick hooves, and its long, narrow tail was like a scorpion's tail that curled into a hook. Its huge eyes were purple and as dazzling as crystals, they reflected thousands of illusory lights. Ji Wuhan and Ji Wushuang looked at it a few more times and felt dizzy. Even their consciousness became blurry. It was obvious that the huge black beast's eyes had a special demonic power that could affect everyone's divine soul. But the strangest thing was that the huge black beast's body was sometimes bright and sometimes dark, constantly changing between reality and illusion. Ji Tianqing stared at it for a while and saw the clues. A playful smile appeared on his face. Meng He, you're quite lucky to be able to capture a void spirit realm beast without being devoured by it. Hearing this, Ji Wuhan and Ji Wushuang both looked puzzled and hurriedly asked. Father, what kind of species is a void spirit realm beast? Why haven't I heard of it? Father, is this beast very powerful? How does it compare to a divine beast? Ji Tianqing showed a loving expression and patiently explained, the void spirit realm beast is an ancient species. It's a special ferocious beast that's comparable to a divine beast in terms of aptitude and combat power. They've always lived in the endless void, using darkness as their cover and killing and devouring as their goal. They wander in the void and wreak havoc everywhere. Not only can they devour stars to increase their strength, but they can also kill all living things in the void. Moreover, they can travel freely in the void and have an extremely strong concealment ability. Therefore, it's difficult for ordinary true gods to catch them. Only divine gods can kill them. After that, he glanced at the void spirit realm beast in the square again and chuckled. It's a pity that the void spirit realm beast that Meng He caught is not yet an adult. According to the age of a void spirit realm beast, it's no more than 3,000 years old, and it's still in its infancy. Marshal Meng He and the golden-armored fleet captains listened to Ji Tianqing's eloquence. Seeing that he knew the void spirit realm beast like the back of his hand, and that he knew more about it than they did, they were all shocked. Hearing Ji Tianqing talk about the strength of the void spirit realm beast, Marshal Meng He's face was full of pride and complacency. However, when Ji Tianqing said that the beast was not yet an adult, the complacent smile on his face immediately froze. Ji Tianqing. Don't be so arrogant. Even if this void spirit realm beast is still in its infancy, it has the strength of a LV3 true god and can still kill you. As he spoke, Marshal Meng He pointed to the gate of the palace behind him and sneered. What's more, Ben Shuai has 34 carefully refined heavenly battle puppets. As his voice fell, more than 30 ferocious and strange figures flew out of the gate of the palace and landed in the square one after another. Bang! 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 The heavenly battle puppets landed on the ground and made a dull sound, causing the whole square to tremble. Every heavenly battle puppet was unusually tall and majestic, and its body was full of murderous intent. Ji Tianqing looked up and saw that the 34 heavenly battle puppets were all transformed by the martial gods of various worlds in the starry sky. Those martial gods of foreign clans had strange appearances. Some looked like orcs, and some looked like giants. They had all lost their minds, and their bodies had been smelted together with many divine-level metals, turning into metal monsters that looked very ferocious. Among them, the tallest heavenly battle puppet reached a height of 1,000 feet, and the shortest one was at least 100 feet. Their bodies were full of weapons, and their limbs and heads were full of sharp thorns and blades, revealing a terrifying murderous intent. Obviously, these heavenly battle puppets did not feel pain, and did not know fear or retreat. Their combat power was very strong, and they were terrifying killing machines. Chapter 2660. The void spirit realm beast stood in the middle of the square, looking down at Ji Tianqing and the other two with gloomy eyes. The 34 heavenly battle puppets spread out, surrounding the father and son trio. Outside the encirclement, Marshal Meng He and the 24 golden-armored captains were also eyeing them covetously, sneering mockingly. The atmosphere in the square was very solemn, and a battle was about to break out. Under the heavy encirclement, Ji Wuhan and Ji Wushuang both gripped the Source Stone Divine Sword tightly. Only Ji Tianqing looked indifferent, as if he was at ease, without the slightest worry. He even looked at Marshal Meng He calmly and asked, "This void spirit realm beast and those ugly and inferior puppets are your so-called trump cards? If that's all you can do, I advise you to wait for 3 more days. When all the captains and warriors under your command are here, you can put up a desperate struggle. Maybe you can give me some pressure." Ji Tianqing's tone was calm and frank. He was definitely not bluffing, but stating the truth. But how could Marshal Meng He and the other golden-armored captains believe him? They were either roaring in anger or laughing in anger. "Human scum, you're so arrogant that you're out of control. Ignorant bastard, it seems like you haven't died before. You don't know what fear is. Ha ha ha. Crazy. That guy is crazy. Surrounded by so many strong people, he can still brag without batting an eyelid. He's really arrogant to the highest level. I admire people like him who are still stubborn even in the face of death." Marshal Meng He shook his head helplessly and mocked contemptuously, "Ji Tianqing, you can be arrogant as much as you want. Anyway, you're going to die soon. If you kneel down and kowtow to Ben Shuai and beg for mercy, maybe Ben Shuai will be merciful and leave you an intact corpse. Ben Shuai can also take your corpse to the great emperor to claim credit." Ha 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 ha. Hearing Marshal Meng He insult Ji Tianqing like this, Ji Wuhan and Ji Wushuang's eyes turned cold, and their hearts surged with anger. Their father was an omnipotent god in their hearts, a supreme heaven that no one could blaspheme. In his anger, Ji Wushuang was about to take a step forward and attack with his sword. Ji Tianqing, however, stretched out his hand and pressed on her shoulder. Smiling, he shook his head and said, "Yaya, don't be affected by the enemy's words. That's just the lowest level of psychological attack. Moreover, they were just a bunch of weak and ignorant ants. Why would a lion care about the provocation of an ant?" Ji Wuxuang nodded and said solemnly, "I will remember father's teachings." Ji Tianqing nodded with a gratified expression and said, "Leave these ants to father. Later, father will leave a few alive for you to practice your swordsmanship and movement techniques." Seeing this, Great General Meng He and the captains burst out laughing. Marshal Meng He was completely speechless. He pointed his sword at Ji Tianqing and shouted coldly, "Ji Tianqing, Ben Shuai's horizons have been broadened today. You are about to die, but you still don't forget to show off in front of your children. Ben Shuai decided not to kill you first, but to beat you half to death and make you kneel on the ground and beg for mercy. Ben Shuai wants your two children to see with their own eyes how incompetent and lowly you are. I want them to know that there is a painful price to pay for showing off." As his voice fell, Marshal Meng He waved the divine sword in his hand and gave the order to attack. Suddenly, the virtual spirit realm beast growled and rushed out with a flash of black light. Its figure disappeared in an instant, and in the next moment, it crossed the distance of 10 miles and rushed to Ji Tianqing's head. It raised its claws and slammed down. Ji Tianqing had been standing in the same place, with the posture of a strong man, protecting the two children behind him. When the claws of the virtual spirit realm beast fell from the sky, he raised his right hand and punched out. A condensed golden fist light, carrying a mountain-sized phantom of a dragon and elephant, instantly hit the virtual spirit realm beast. Bang! With a loud explosion, the dragon and elephant divine fist hit the head of the virtual spirit realm beast. Its sharp front claws, its bloody mouth full of fangs, and its huge head were all blasted into pieces. Pieces of flesh and blood splattered all over the sky. Ow! With a shrill scream, the virtual spirit realm beast that had lost its head flew back and crashed into the main hall of the divine palace. The 3-story palace was directly smashed into ruins, splashing dust all over the sky. The headless body of the virtual spirit realm beast fell in the ruins of the palace, twitching violently, and black blood kept spurting out of its neck. Its breath of life was quickly dissipating, and its body gradually became cold and hollow. Soon, it would dissipate. One move. Ji Tianqing only used one punch to kill the legendary virtual spirit realm beast, which was comparable to a divine beast. Such a shocking scene made Marshal Meng He and the captains of the golden armored ships all widen their eyes and open their mouths in horror. Unparalleled fear surged from their hearts and spread to their whole bodies. As if they had been petrified, they couldn't even make a sound. At this moment, 15 fearless and ferocious heavenly battle puppets rushed to Ji Tianqing without any regard for their own safety. They raised their butcher's knives and halberds, releasing destructive killing moves toward Ji Tianqing, Ji Wuhan, and Ji Wuxuang. Before the knives and swords arrived, an invisible pressure pressed down like a mountain, enveloping the entire square. At this critical moment, Ji Tianqing was still calm and raised his palms. Swish! He instantly unleashed 30 golden palm shadows that were wreathed in lightning, and they slashed towards the 15 heavenly battle puppets like giant blades that could split the heavens. Then, there was a series of deafening muffled bangs. The 15 heavenly battle puppets were all split in half by the golden palm shadows, splashing metal fragments all over the sky. The violent impact sent them flying backward, crashing into the surrounding palaces with a loud rumble. Instantly, the 4 palaces around the square were smashed into ruins. The 15 heavenly battle puppets were also turned into piles of scrap metal, rolling and struggling in the ruins. The 5-colored divine lightning wrapped around them like chains, and they were quickly burned to ashes. At this moment, the other 19 heavenly battle puppets pounced toward Ji Tianqing without fear of death, joining forces to attack him. There was an explosion, and hundreds of knives and swords lit up, covering half of the square. Ji Tianqing stood in place without moving. He raised his hands again, and his 10 fingers flicked repeatedly, shooting out dozens of dazzling golden sword lights. Swish! 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 The dazzling sword lights flew into the sky, destroying the attacks of the puppets. Immediately after, countless sword lights pierced through the bodies of the heavenly battle puppets, causing a series of muffled bangs and splashes of blood and debris. What was even more frightening was that none of the sword lights missed, and they all pierced the vital points of the heavenly battle puppets. The 19 heavenly battle puppets didn't die, but they fell from the sky like dumplings, smashing into the square. Before they could get up and fight again, Ji Tianqing shot out several golden chains, tying them up and putting them into his interspatial ring. Chapter 2661. There was no doubt that Ji Tianqing had deliberately left the 19 heavenly battle puppets for the 2 children to practice. At this point, the virtual spirit realm beast and the 34 heavenly battle puppets had been dealt with by Ji Tianqing. It had only taken a few breaths of time, and the process was clean and tidy. It was an instant kill. Marshal Meng He and the 24 gold-armored captains felt their scalps go numb, and they felt chills all over their bodies. They looked terrified and desperate. If they had not seen the whole process with their own eyes, they would never have believed that someone could be so powerful. The trump card that Marshal Meng He had carefully prepared and hidden for many years was so weak. Rustle, 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 Ji Tianqing walked toward the crowd at a moderate pace, and light footsteps sounded under his feet. Marshal Meng He and the gold-armored captains were suddenly awakened, and they all looked fearful. Everyone wanted to retreat, and several gold-armored captains could not help but retreat. Ji Tianqing. The warriors of the Heaven Punisher tribe are not cowards who are afraid of death. If you want to bathe the celestial palace in blood, we will fight you to the end and destroy everything. Marshal Meng He was nervous, but his voice was as loud as a bell as he roared. Not only Ji Tianqing and his 2 sons, but even the 20 gold-armored captains could tell that he was not confident enough. Ji Tianqing smiled disapprovingly. Destroy everything. You guys aren't qualified. As his voice fell, he suddenly raised his right hand and pointed to the sky with a sword sign. Sword rain. As he shouted, thousands of dazzling golden sword lights lit up in the sky and fell like raindrops. Swish, 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 swish. The thousands of sword lights formed a sword net and smashed down, covering Marshal Meng He and the 24 gold-armored captains. The dazzling golden sword lights danced and shuttled back and forth like meteors and lightning, killing everyone. The entire square was dazzling with golden light. The sword lights were extremely fast and fierce, and no one could avoid them. In the blink of an eye, Marshal Meng He and the 24 gold-armored captains had been hit by more than a dozen swords. Bang! 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 Muffled sounds continued to burst out, and one after another, blood-curdling screams resounded in the sky. Puffs of purple blood burst out, and clumps of flesh and blood fell on the square. Ji Tianqing just stood there with his hands clasped behind his back, watching expressionlessly. The thousands of dazzling golden sword lights seemed to have a life of their own as they crazily attacked the Heaven Punishers. After a short span of 4 breaths, one of the captains could not hold on any longer and was killed by the sword light. His tall and sturdy body was pierced with hundreds of bloody holes by the sword light, like a broken sieve. Even after he fell to the ground, the sword light did not stop strangling him. Soon, his body was minced into pieces. Then, the second, the third, the fourth. Many captains fell one after another. Every one of the captains who fell to the ground had a miserable ending. Most of them died without a complete corpse. Such a tragic scene made the heavily wounded and stubborn captains feel endless fear and despair. Soon, 20 breaths had passed. The dazzling golden sword lights that filled the sky finally ran out of energy and gradually dissipated. 21 of the 24 captains had been killed. Only 3 captains were lucky enough to survive, but they were also covered in wounds. Their bodies were like honeycombs, and blood was gushing out. Marshal Meng He was, of course, still alive, but he was heavily injured and looked miserable. As soon as the sword light dissipated, he led the 3 heavily wounded captains out of the square and fled out of the Heaven Punisher Palace. He had forgotten all about the bravery and integrity of the Heaven Punisher race. He did not even dare to think about the billions of resources in the Heaven Punisher Palace. He only wanted to escape from this place and get rid of the terrifying demon Ji Tianqing. In order to escape successfully, he and the 3 captains split up and fled. However, long before the battle began, Ji Tianqing had already made arrangements. When he saw Marshal Meng He and the others flee, he still stood there calmly and had no intention of chasing after them. This was because the White Dragon and the 4 divine beasts were guarding the perimeter of the Heaven Punisher Palace. During this period of time, they had already killed hundreds of black armored guards who had tried to escape. When Marshal Meng He and the 3 captains desperately fled to the edge of the Heaven Punisher Palace, they were immediately stopped by the White Dragon. Bang! 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 After a series of earth-shattering explosions, the 3 captains were killed on the spot. Marshal Meng He was also captured by the White Dragon. He was held by the neck and brought back to the square. Then, he was thrown in front of Ji Tianqing. Plop! Marshal Meng He, who was covered in blood, smashed into the golden stone ground. His body bent over as he fell to the ground at Ji Tianqing's feet. Ji Tianqing looked down at him from above and said expressionlessly, "I gave you a chance to gather your fleets and fight 3 days later. Unfortunately, you rejected me and insisted on seeking death. Now, you no longer have a chance. There is no need to beg for mercy. I want to ask you a few questions. However, you are stubborn and would rather die than submit. I am sure you will not cooperate with me. Therefore, I do not want to waste my time with you. I will search your soul directly." As he spoke, Ji Tianqing raised his right hand and used the soul-searching divine skill. A mysterious and cold black light surged out from his palm. Marshal Meng He was instantly filled with fear. His entire body started to tremble. At this moment, he finally understood how terrifying Ji Tianqing's strength and methods were. He suddenly remembered something. Previously, Ji Tianqing knew that he had sent a message to the Heaven Punisher Great Emperor, but he did not stop him. After that, Ji Tianqing said that even if the Heaven Punisher Great Emperor knew about it, it would be useless. He would not come to the Purple Cloud planet to save him. Moreover, if the Heaven Punisher Great Emperor knew that Ji Tianqing was here, he would not dare to come. At that time, Marshal Meng He did not understand what Ji Tianqing was trying to do. Now, he finally understood. He was completely convinced and admitted defeat. This was because he knew that Ji Tianqing's strength and methods were even more terrifying than the Heaven Punisher Great Emperor's. When he thought of this, he had no choice but to give up his dignity and integrity. He quickly shouted, "No. Ji Tianqing, as long as you ask, I will answer all your questions truthfully." His voice was low and hoarse. His heart was filled with humiliation and despair. Ji Tianqing slowly withdrew his right hand and asked with interest, "Oh. I thought you would rather die than obey me. Why are you so sensible now?" Marshal Meng He did not answer. Instead, he said in a low voice, "I know that I will definitely die today. I am not asking you to let me go. I only hope that after I answer your questions, you will give me a quick death. We are both true gods, deities who are above all living beings. I hope that you will give me some face and not bring shame to your divine might." Ji Tianqing nodded with a smile and said, "All right." Then, he asked, "Where is the Heaven Punisher's base? How far is it from the Purple Cloud planet?" Marshal Meng He answered without hesitation, "Our base is in the Celestial Sphere, the Heaven Punisher planet. 900 years ago, we took control of the entire Celestial Sphere and renamed it the Heaven Punisher planet. From the Purple Cloud planet to the Heaven Punisher planet, we have to pass through 3 major planets. Even a heavenly god-level battleship that can perform a space jump will take 18 years to arrive. Chapter 2662. Not only did Marshal Meng He answer Su Ping's question truthfully, but he also told Su Ping about the 3 major star zones they had passed through. Green Sun Star Zone, Black Dragon Star Zone, and Fan Gang Star Zone. The vastness of these 3 star areas wasn't less than Zishao Star Area. Each star zone had hundreds of macro worlds and tens of millions of stars. There were also many dangerous and forbidden lands, as well as a resplendent galaxy. After Marshal Meng He answered, Ji Tianqing asked his second question. Other than the great Emperor Tian Fa, who are the other true gods in the Heaven Punisher tribe? Where are they now? Marshal Meng He thought for a while before answering. There are at least hundreds of true gods. I can't say for sure. However, among the hundreds of true gods, there are 7 outstanding ones who are the leaders of our tribe. The strongest person below the Great Emperor is the Great Emperor's son, Tian Shu. Tian Shu has been valued by the god since he was young. He was taken in as his last disciple and taught him divine powers. He is known as the world's top genius. He has the 7-star brilliant sun divine body and reached level 9 true god realm in just 300 years. His strength is second only to the Great Emperor. He has terrifying combat strength and supreme divine skills. He is known as the Astral War God. When Ji Tianqing heard this, he raised his eyebrows and showed an interested expression. Prince Tian Shu, the 7-star brilliant sun divine body, was taken in as the last disciple of the upper realm's god. He was taught by the god and was named the Astral War God. Ha ha ha. Interesting. Marshal Meng He didn't respond. He didn't want to talk about this. In his mind, Ji Tianqing's strength and status couldn't be compared to the great Emperor Tian Fa and Tian Shu. However, he was going to die. There was no point in talking about it. After a moment of silence, he continued, other than Prince Tian Shu, the 3rd strongest person in our tribe is the Empress, Yun Shuiyan. The Empress lives in seclusion in the palace and rarely shows herself. She is the most mysterious. It is said that the Empress doesn't have the blood of our tribe. She is the reincarnation of a god from the upper realm and was born in the water spirit tribe. 800 years ago, when the great emperor was conquering the universe, he met the saintess of the water spirit tribe, Yun Shuiyan. He was stunned by her beauty and shocking talent. Therefore, the great emperor kidnapped her and brought her to planet Heaven Punisher. After 100 years of persuasion, he finally won her heart. 300 years ago, Yun Shuiyan had given birth to her son, Tian Shu, and had never shown her face again. Marshal Zhenan had once mentioned that Yun Shuiyan was a mighty figure from the upper realm. The reason why she had yet to ascend was because, she wants to borrow an ancient divine ability to defy the heavens and change her fate. In this life, she has a chance of breaking through to the realm of supreme divine kings. When he said this, Great General Meng He's eyes were filled with admiration and yearning. Even though Ji Tianqing's heart was as calm as water, he could not help but frown. He thought to himself, Yun Shuiyan. There are tens of thousands of godly sovereigns in the upper realm, but I have never heard of this name. This person must have obtained some great fortuitous encounter. Not only was he able to reincarnate, he was even able to change his fate and charge into the God-King realm. This is a huge disaster. If we don't get rid of it, I'm afraid there will be future disasters. At this moment, Marshal Meng He continued, the 4th strongest person in our clan is the highly respected imperial tutor. Not only was he the great emperor's right-hand man and military advisor, but he was also the spiritual leader of our hundreds of millions of people. It was his series of reforms and actions that allowed our clan to rapidly expand and multiply, giving us the ability to unify the upper realm. Before Marshal Meng He could finish, Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said, there's no need to mention the imperial tutor. I've already killed him. Marshal Meng. He was instantly speechless. He raised his head in shock and looked at Ji Tianqing in horror. After a while, he calmed down and said in a low voice, under the imperial tutor are the 4 marshals. They were the East Conquering Marshal, West Conquering Marshal, North Conquering Marshal, and Protector Marshal. The strength of these 4 marshals is similar. The Kingdom Protector Marshal is stronger, having reached the 6th level of the True God realm many years ago. The other 3 marshals are also at the 6th level of the True God realm. Their actual combat strength seems to be slightly stronger than the Southern Marshal. After listening, Ji Tianqing nodded and said, after the death of the Southern Marshal, there are still 4 marshals under the Heaven Punisher Emperor. The Heaven Punisher tribe is really full of talents and powerhouses. Marshal Meng. He felt a strong sense of pride. He smiled and said, of course. Our clan has always been the most talented clan in the 3,000 worlds. If not, how could our clan be protected by the upper realm's god? Our clan has received God's grace and bathed in the divine light. Of course, we're like a tiger that has grown wings and a dragon that soars to the heavens. Ji Tianqing, although you're very powerful, I still have to give you a piece of advice. If you go against our clan, you'll definitely die. If you're smart enough, you should find the right time to reconcile with our emperor. Our emperor is thirsty for talents. As long as you work for our clan, the emperor will definitely nurture you. Ji Tianqing smiled coldly and interrupted him. He said in a mocking tone, many years ago, before the Heaven Punisher Emperor fought with me, he said the same thing. Not only did he want to make me a marshal, but he also wanted to help me break through the Heaven God realm and ascend to the upper realm. However, I rejected him and gave him a good beating. I almost killed him. Marshal Meng. He was speechless again. His face stiffened and his heart twitched. In the face of a mysterious and arrogant person like Ji Tianqing, he felt that any words he said were pale and laughable. Ji Tianqing thought for a while and asked a third question, how many people are there in the Heaven Punisher tribe? The black-armored warriors who followed the fleet were all at the martial sage realm. I'm very curious. How many martial sages are there in the Heaven Punisher tribe? How did they nurture so many of them? Marshal Meng. He smiled and said, the imperial tutor racked his brains for 800 years to solve the problem of our clan's reproduction. 1,000 years ago, there were only 8 billion people in our clan. Now, there are more than 30 billion of them. A mere Heaven Punisher planet does not have enough resources to support more than 30 billion people. Thus, we have no choice but to conquer more territories and plunder more resources. Hearing this, Bai Long, who was standing beside Ji Tianqing, could not help but interject. F***ck. If that's the case, the Heaven Punisher tribe has no choice and has no choice. The most damnable one is the imperial tutor. He caused us to reproduce like rats and bring disaster to the 3,000 realms. Marshal Meng. He glanced at Bai Long and did not reply. Instead, he continued, as for the number of martial sages, there are at least 100 million of them. After all, our clan has the protection of God's grace. Nothing is impossible. Any adult martial artist who has reached the cross-calamity realm can head to the heaven worship altar in each country to receive the God's blessing. After the God's blessing, they can directly break through to the martial sage realm. After cultivating for a few years and stabilizing their cultivation, they can join the fleet and conquer the galaxy. Bai Long's eyes widened and he exclaimed in disbelief, are you sure? They have just reached the cross-calamity realm and after the God's blessing, they can directly break through to the martial sage realm? Don't they need to go through the 9 tribulations? What is that God's blessing? How can it help them avoid the 9 tribulations? Chapter 2663. Bai Long was not the only one who was shocked. Ji Tianqing also frowned, and his expression became extremely solemn. Even Ji Wuhan and Ji Wushuang had realized where the problem lay, and they were deeply shocked. Ji Tianqing did not speak, but many thoughts appeared in his mind. The 3,000 worlds and the 10,000 races are all restricted by the rules of heaven. Regardless of whether it is a martial artist, a flower, a tree, a bird, or a beast, all living things have to go through 9 tribulations to become a god. This is the rules of heaven, and no one or god can change it. The heaven-worshipping altar of the Heaven Punisher tribe can prevent one from going through 9 tribulations and break through to the martial sage realm. How is this possible? Even if I had the power of a peak supreme being in my previous life, I could not control the rules of heaven. Who is the god behind the Heaven Punisher tribe? How can he control the tribulations and change the rules of heaven? Thinking of this, Ji Tianqing's heart felt heavy. He felt an inexplicable pressure. At the same time, his heart was filled with doubts, and he wanted to go to the Heaven Punisher tribe immediately to unravel the secrets of the heaven-worshipping altar. When Ji Tianqing collected his thoughts, he glanced at Bai Long beside him. Bai Long kept his thoughtful expression and looked at Su Mo. He shook his head and sighed. "Master, it is scary to think about it. We still have a long way to go, and it will be more dangerous than we expected." Ji Tianqing knew this, and he nodded. "We will deal with whatever comes our way. In my previous life, I could not take the last step. In this life, no one can stop me." Bai Long nodded, and his eyes were filled with anticipation and desire. Marshal Meng, he looked at Ji Tianqing in a daze. Besides respect, he was also curious and doubtful. Although he did not understand Ji Tianqing's words, he was sure that Ji Tianqing's identity was not simple. Ji Tianqing then asked Marshal Meng he a few more questions. They were all related to the Heaven Punisher tribe, but they were not as important as the first 3 questions. After Marshal Meng he answered all the questions, Ji Tianqing nodded in satisfaction. "Meng he, you did well. Now, I will fulfill my promise and give you an honorable death. Kill yourself." When Marshal Meng he heard the words "end his own life," he did not feel despair or pain. Instead, he looked as if he had been relieved of a heavy burden. In fact, there was even a hint of delight and a sneer of success in the depths of his eyes. "Ji Tianqing, you are indeed a gentleman. See you again. See you again." White Dragon frowned with a strange expression. Ji Tianqing, on the other hand, looked indifferent. The corner of his mouth curled up into a smile, as if he didn't realize there was a problem. At this time, Great General Meng he raised his palms and circulated his god force, shattering Huang Xiaolong's body. Boom! His body, which was riddled with holes, crumbled into dust on the spot and ignited with purple flames that soared into the sky. Intense purple flames rushed into the sky. An invisible force was using the purple flames as a cover to escape. Obviously, Marshal Meng he had left a backup plan. However, just as that formless energy was about to escape from the heaven-punishing divine palace, Ji Tianqing, who was standing still, suddenly raised his left hand and made a grabbing motion toward the sky. Swoosh! The boundless power of the realm immediately formed a giant palm high in the sky and caught that formless energy. In the next instant, the giant palm that held the formless energy landed on the square. The giant palm shrunk tens of thousands of times and became a ball of golden light the size of a fist. It floated in front of Ji Tianqing. That formless energy was sealed in the golden light and could not escape. After struggling violently for a while, it finally fell into despair and formed a transparent face. It was Marshal Meng he's face. However, it was only half the size of a palm. It glared at Ji Tianqing with resentment and cursed in a weak voice, "Ji Tianqing. You untrustworthy bastard, you despicable beast." Seeing this scene, White Dragon, Ji Wuhan, and Ji Wushuang all had a look of realization. Ji Wushuang muttered angrily, "No wonder this fellow was so tactful and surrendered so easily. He even answered all of Father's questions. It turns out that he wanted to lower Father's guard and use a secret technique to escape." Ji Wuhan nodded in agreement and said solemnly, "The Heaven Punishers are not only brave, cruel, and domineering, but also very cunning." Using this opportunity, White Dragon hurriedly cleared his name. He pointed at the ball of light and said, "Junior brother, junior sister, you too saw it with your own eyes, right? The Heaven Punishers are cruel, vicious, and cunning. Therefore, we cannot be merciful to the Heaven Punishers, and we cannot let our guard down. Being merciful to them is being cruel to ourselves." Ji Wuhan and Ji Wushuang were silently agreeing with White Dragon's words. At this moment, Ji Tianqing looked at the golden ball of light with a smile and said to Marshal Meng He, "From the moment you begged for mercy without any backbone, I guessed that you would do this. However, you were too naive. Since I promised to give you a dignified death, I definitely won't let you live. Until we meet again." After saying that, Ji Tianqing reached out and grabbed the golden ball of light. A brilliant golden divine flame burned in his palm. Swoosh! The entire golden ball of light burned and quickly burned Marshal Meng He into nothingness. When the divine flame dissipated, Ji Tianqing withdrew his hand and ordered White Dragon, "Let Colored Glaze and Lan Kun guard the divine palace. You take Qian Yu and Black Dragon to kill the remaining Heaven Punishers and empty the treasury." White Dragon happily acknowledged the order and immediately went to carry out the mission. There were still hundreds of Heaven Punishers hiding in the Heaven Punishing Divine Palace. White Dragon, Qian Yu, and Black Dragon searched the Divine Palace and quickly found the remaining Heaven Punishers and killed them all. Then, they tried to break into the treasury one by one and took all the divine tier resources and treasures into their spatial rings. One day later, the two treasuries were emptied. White Dragon left the Heaven-Punishing Divine Palace and sent the resources and treasures back to the Five Elements world, placing them in the Divine Tower. The four divine beasts guarded the Heaven-Punishing Divine Palace and silently waited for the next battle. Ji Tianqing took out 19 heavenly battle puppets from his spatial ring and threw them on the plaza. "Chen, Yaya, you did not have the chance to participate in the previous battle. So, Father left these heavenly battle puppets for you to practice. These heavenly battle puppets are not afraid of death and have extraordinary combat strength. They will definitely be able to temper your combat skills and experience. Take this opportunity to practice well." After saying that, Ji Tianqing waved his hand and undid the chains on the puppets. The puppets immediately regained their freedom. They stared at Ji Wuhan and Ji Wushuang with scarlet eyes and immediately surrounded them. Although they had been injured by Ji Tianqing and their combat strength had been reduced by half, they were still fierce and ferocious. There were as many as 19 of them and they were still able to put a lot of pressure on Ji Wuhan and Ji Wushuang. The siblings did not dare to be careless. They gripped their divine swords tightly and cautiously defended and counterattacked. An exciting battle of trials unfolded in the square. Ji Tianqing stood at the peak of the divine palace and watched the battle while giving pointers to the two children. It was quite effective. Hurry up and read it. Chapter 2664. The battle lasted for an hour before it ended. Ji Wuhan and Ji Wushuang had killed the 19 heaven battle puppets. The two siblings had only suffered some superficial wounds and were fine. Although their strength was similar to the heaven battle puppets, they knew many secret techniques. Their teamwork was perfect, and they could unleash a battle prowess comparable to a true god's. The 19 heaven battle puppets had already been injured by Ji Tianqing, and they only had half of their battle prowess left. Even when they joined forces to deal with Ji Wuhan and Ji Wushuang, the two siblings managed to turn the situation around and defeat them one by one. After this trial battle, the two siblings' teamwork was even better. They also had more battle experience, and their control of divine techniques was even more perfect. After this matter ended, everyone stayed in the heaven-punishing divine palace and waited patiently. Soon, 3 days had passed. The captains guarding the 5 continents led their fleets and rushed back to the heaven-punishing divine palace to rescue Marshal Meng He. However, when they arrived at the heaven-punishing divine palace, they realized that the situation was not good. The entire heaven-punishing divine palace was surrounded by a dark purple barrier of divine light. It was very quiet inside and outside the heaven-punishing divine palace. There were no sounds of fighting, and there were no heaven-punishing divine guards walking around. Many captains were full of doubts and vigilance as they crossed the barrier of divine light and entered the heaven-punishing divine palace. The moment they stepped into the heaven-punishing divine palace, disaster befell them. The overwhelming light of divine spells fell from the sky like a flood, drowning the captains and their fleets. In an instant, many battleships were turned into scrap metal, and many captains were severely injured and on the verge of death. As for the black-armored guards hiding in the battleships, they suffered even more casualties. A one-sided massacre began. Ji Tianqing sat at the top of the heaven-punishing divine palace and did not need to do anything. Bai Long led Ji Wuhan, Ji Wushuang, and the 4 divine beasts to slaughter the heaven-punishing fleet. The battle did not last long, and it ended quickly. After the battle, the heaven-punishing fleet suffered heavy casualties and was completely wiped out. Bai Long, Ji Wuhan, Ji Wushuang, and the others were unscathed. Such a huge contrast and such a shocking result caused everyone to feel excited. In the next 3 days, more and more fleets returned. Most of the captains let down their guard and they saw that the divine palace was still there and that the purple light shield was safe and sound. They mistakenly thought that the divine palace was unharmed and that Marshal Meng He had stopped the invaders. Therefore, they did not have much vigilance and stepped into the purple light barrier. However, they soon regretted it. What greeted them was, of course, slaughter and death. Even if there were a few captains who were paranoid and vigilant, they would still be on guard. They wandered around the vicinity of the divine palace and did not dare to enter the range of the divine palace. Even so, it was useless. Whenever they encountered such a situation, the white dragon would lead the 4 mythological beasts to attack and destroy the battleships. Within these 3 days, there were over 100 battles that took place here and there. Ji Tianqing basically did not make a move. After all, there wasn't a single expert who was qualified enough for him to personally deal with. Bai Long, Ji Wuhan, Ji Wushuang, and the 4 divine beasts could all be easily dealt with. After 3 days of fighting, more than 80% of the heaven-slicing fleet guarding Zixiao Star had been slaughtered. Ji Wuhan and Ji Wushuang's performance in the battle was the most heroic and outstanding. After a series of battles, they had greatly honed their battle experience and their strength and foundation of the divine path had become more stable. They had gained a lot. After 3 days, everything was over. No fleet rushed back to the divine palace, and the heaven-slicing experts and guards left behind on the 5 continents could not cause any trouble. Therefore, Ji Tianqing destroyed the heaven-slicing divine palace. He rushed to the entrance of the purple heaven cave alone to check on the ceiling formation there. The white dragon led Ji Wuhan, Ji Wushuang, and the 4 divine beasts to the various continents to clean up the survivors of the heaven-slicing divine palace. Thus, another month's time was delayed. After a month, the remaining heaven-slicing experts on the various continents were basically wiped out. Only a few heaven-slicing experts escaped, but they could only run for their lives and could not cause any trouble. After Ji Tianqing arrived at the entrance of the Purple Heaven Cave, he carefully inspected it. He found that the maze formation had been broken, but the ceiling formation was still intact. The facts proved that the heaven-slicing Great Emperor had searched for the Purple Heaven Cave after occupying the Purple Heaven planet. However, after the heaven-slicing Great Emperor had found the entrance to the Purple Heaven Cave, he had spent a lot of effort to break the maze formation, but he could not do anything about the ceiling formation. This was exactly what Ji Tianqing had expected. When he had set up the formation, it was to prevent the heaven-slicing Great Emperor from making a comeback. Therefore, he had set up 2 heaven god level formations. The fact that the heaven-slicing Great Emperor could break one heaven god-level maze formation was already impressive. Ji Tianqing strolled around the Purple Heaven Cave and meditated for half a month before leaving. After a month, the situation on the Purple Heaven planet was settled. The heaven-slicing experts had all been killed, and the 5 continents had returned to peace. Billions of people had regained their freedom. Ji Tianqing's deeds once again spread across the 5 continents and were praised by countless people. The great emperors of many divine nations also jointly requested Ji Tianqing to be the Star Lord to protect the Purple Heaven planet and the entire star zone. This time, Ji Tianqing still did not agree. In the past, the 5 elemental world was in the Purple Heaven star zone. If the Purple Heaven star zone was invaded, the 5 elemental world would not be spared either. The two sides shared prosperity and loss, and their fates were linked. However, it was different now. He could control the 5 elemental world and travel through the void and the various star zones. He did not know when he would be able to return from the Purple Heaven star zone. Even if he became the Star Lord of the Purple Heaven planet, it would be meaningless. If that was the case, it would be better to leave the position of Star Lord empty and leave it to a powerful and determined expert to protect the Purple Heaven planet. 2 months later, Ji Tianqing had finished dealing with the trivial matters on the Purple Heaven planet. Therefore, he left the Purple Heaven planet with the White Dragon, Ji Wuhan, Ji Wushuang, and the 4 divine beasts. They steered the battleship across the void and returned to the 5 elemental world. Then, Ji Tianqing controlled the 5 elemental world and continued to travel through the void toward the heaven-punishing star zone. From the Purple Heaven planet to the heaven-punishing star zone, they would have to pass through 3 star zones. The journey was long and filled with dangers. Who knew how long it would take for them to reach their destination? Therefore, Ji Tianqing was not in a hurry. He cultivated as he traveled through the void. He would observe the mortal worlds he encountered along the way and search for traces of the heaven-punishing race. If a world was occupied by the heaven-punishing race, he would help destroy the heaven-punishing fleet and save the cultivators and people of that world. As a result, his speed was even slower. After 5 years, the 5 elemental world finally flew out of the Purple Heaven star zone and entered the Azure Sun star zone. At the same time, more than 80% of the heaven-punishing fleet in the Purple Heaven star zone had been destroyed. The Southern Expedition fleet only existed in name, and the few survivors could no longer cause any trouble. Calm. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 2665. Before Great General Meng He was defeated, he had honestly explained the situation of the 3 major star zones. Ji Tianqing had long known that the Green Sun star zone had been conquered by the Heaven Punishers more than 30 years ago. 90% of the 100 worlds in the huge star zone had fallen under the control of the Heaven Punishers fleet. The East Conquering Fleet was now in charge of the Green Sun star zone. According to Great General Meng He, the East Conquering Fleet was slightly stronger than the South Conquering Fleet. The generals and captains under his command were all elite soldiers. Most importantly, the East Conquering Fleet's invasion of the Green Sun star zone was smoother. It was unlike when the South Conquering Fleet attacked the Purple Cloud star zone, where they had spent so much time and sacrificed so many Heaven Punishers. After the East Conquering Fleet unified the Green Sun star zone, they still had more than 5,000 battleships and 500,000 elite soldiers left. The situation in the Green Sun star zone had been very stable for more than 30 years. Even though the cultivators of the various worlds would resist, they were scattered and could not achieve much. Soon, they were suppressed by the Heaven Punishers. After so many years of operation, the Heaven Punishers' rule had been consolidated. After recuperating, their forces had become even stronger. Ji Tianqing had long been mentally prepared. The East Conquering Fleet's strength and foundation were definitely stronger than the South Conquering Fleet's. He would definitely face many years of fierce battles in the Green Sun star zone this time. 3 days later. The five elements world flew to the border of the green sun star zone. In the dark void ahead, a silver river of stars that stretched from north to south and was billions of miles long appeared. Even though it was still a few 100 million miles away, the five elements world was bathed in a cold silver glow. The ancient, majestic, and mysterious aura that rushed toward them made everyone gasp in amazement. The galaxy that hung in the void like a jade belt was the border of the green sun star zone. One could only enter the green sun star zone after crossing that huge galaxy. Looking from afar, there were tens of thousands of stars in the galaxy, shining brightly and dazzlingly. No one knew how many tens of thousands of years this beautiful scene had lasted in the void. Ji Tianqing, Bai Long, and the others stood on the golden barrier of the five elements world, admiring the galaxy in front of them. Bai Long exclaimed, "1,000 years have passed in the blink of an eye. We can finally see the galaxy in the universe again." His expression was somewhat emotional as many memories surfaced in his mind. He recalled the past when he followed Kenshin and traveled through the void. Ji Tianqing gazed at the Milky Way and said in a calm tone, "The world has changed. Things remain the same, but people have changed. Only the Milky Way remains forever, as splendid as ever." The heavenly Tao was fortunate enough to allow all the races in the world to gain intelligence. Through the cultivation of martial arts and the divine Tao, they could also be as brilliant as the stars. However, the sad thing is that no matter how much we gods cultivate we can't escape the cycle of reincarnation and death. Even a peak divine king's lifespan also cannot be mentioned in the same breath as an ordinary star. It was true that even an ordinary star in the galaxy had a lifespan of tens of millions or even hundreds of millions of years. The lifespan of the king of Pantheon was less than 1% of the lifespan of a star. Hearing this, not only did Bai Long's eyes dim, even Ji Wuhan fell silent. Only Ji Wushuang revealed a thoughtful expression as she asked Ji Tianqing, "Father, could it be that the divine king realm is the end of the divine Tao?" Ji Tianqing turned his head to look at her and shook his head with a smile. He said, "For the vast majority of people, yes. However, for those who had once reached the divine king realm, that is not the case." Ji Wushuang's eyes became bright as she asked longingly, "Father, Mother said that you were once one of the strongest divine kings in the world. Then do you know what realm is above the divine king realm?" Ji Tianqing shook his head again and said, "This question was also something that Father painstakingly searched for and explored back then. Fortunately, Father has already touched the threshold of that realm. That realm has already transcended the shackles of the mortal world and jumped out of the cycle of reincarnation. It has remarkable abilities, can do as one pleases, and is immortal." "Immortal?" Ji Wushuang murmured, vaguely understanding something. At this time, Bai Long warned everyone, "In a month, we will be approaching that Milky Way. The five elements world is too big, we cannot pass through that Milky Way. Otherwise, we will collide with countless stars, it is very dangerous. We can only go around that Milky Way and enter the Azure Sun galaxy. Even so, everyone still has to remember. In the future, if you are piloting a warship or flying in the void, you must be careful of this Milky Way. The Milky Way looks magnificent, but it is actually very dangerous and unpredictable. There are many unexpected dangers. Even true gods and heavenly gods will lose their lives if they are not careful." Xian Yu came over and asked curiously, "Old Bai, what dangers can there be in the Milky Way? Could it be that there are some ferocious beasts and divine beasts in the Milky Way?" Bai Long glanced at it and said with a smile, "If it is only ferocious beasts and divine beasts, then it is easy to kill and eat. The dangers in the Milky Way are mostly void storms, void flames, star tides, folded spaces, and black holes. Void storms and void flames are easy to deal with, you all have encountered them a few years ago. The star tide rarely appeared, but its power was extremely terrifying, and its danger was unpredictable. Hundreds of thousands of stars, at a specific time, release a terrifying star shockwave at the same time, which is enough to destroy hundreds or thousands of stars. The most troublesome is the folded space. On the surface, there is no clue, but in reality, it is very difficult to come out after entering. It is very likely that one will be trapped inside and die. And the most terrifying is the legendary black hole. That thing is mysterious and unpredictable. Once you encounter it, you can only avoid it in advance. No one dares to go near it. Not to mention Divine King experts, even thousands or tens of thousands of stars will be destroyed once they are swallowed by the black hole. Bai Long explained the dangers in the void to everyone and taught them how to deal with it. His eloquence flowed like a river and flowed endlessly. Ji Wuhan, Ji Wushuang, and the divine beasts listened attentively, silently memorizing his words. A month passed quickly. The huge five elements world was close to the resplendent Milky Way. Under Ji Tianqing's precise control, the five elements world flew close to the edge of the Milky Way and took a detour. Even so, there was still an accident during the detour. In the resplendent Milky Way, more than a dozen dazzling shooting stars actually flew out and blasted toward the five elements world. At first glance, it was as if there was an unparalleled expert in the Milky Way, using the stars as hidden weapons to shoot at the five elements world. This made Ji Wuhan, Ji Wushuang, and the divine beasts all vigilant. However, Bai Long hurriedly explained to everyone that it was because the five elements world was too big. When it approached the Milky Way, it produced gravitational forces and shockwaves. Some stars with extremely high metal content would be attracted and fly over like shooting stars. If it was hit by a shooting star, the five elements world would definitely be damaged, and there would be a huge shock. Super waves would surge in the sky sea, and several continents would also shatter. Billions of living beings would definitely suffer. Fortunately, Ji Tianqing had long anticipated and taken precautions. When more than a dozen shooting stars attacked one after another, he not only controlled the five elements world to dodge, but he also released vast and mighty power of the world to catch a shooting star. Chapter 2666. That meteor was not big, only 1/10 the size of the five elements world. Even so, Ji Tianqing had to go all out and push his world power to the limit. 8 million golden pillars of light extended from the five elements world's golden light barrier and wrapped around the meteor like tentacles. The meteor flew at an extremely high speed, bringing along the five element world with it for millions of miles. Finally, the power of the meteor was exhausted. Then, the bright light of the meteor gradually extinguished, revealing the surface of the gold and silver star. Without a doubt, the metal content of this meteor had reached an astonishing level. 80% of the entire star was made of metal. These metals were all divine-grade treasures and excellent materials for refining all kinds of divine artifacts. Ji Tianqing controlled the five elements world and flew into the depths of the void while devouring this star. 3 months later, Ji Tianqing had refined the entire metal star. The five elements world seemed to have eaten its fill. Not only was its exhausted power replenished, but its size also doubled. As the world grew, sky, sea and the five continents also quietly expanded. Even the living beings of the entire world sped up their reproduction and grew stronger imperceptibly. Most importantly, Ji Tianqing could clearly feel that his strength had doubled. He had already reached the peak of the true immortal realm and was close to becoming a half-step heavenly god. This result made him rather happy. I merged with the five elements world. The five elements world devoured the stars and grew stronger. My strength also grew along with it. Unfortunately, due to the heavenly Tao's rules, I can't break through to the heavenly god realm in the mortal world. Otherwise, I would be able to recover to the heavenly god realm after refining a few more stars. Not long after, the five elements world arrived near a certain world and stopped in the void. That world was protected by five-colored divine light. There were tens of billions of living beings and abundant resources inside. However, a heaven-conquering general led hundreds of battleships and firmly controlled the entire world. 30 billion martial artists and commoners submitted to the heaven-conquering race and were ordered and enslaved by the heaven-conquering race. Ji Tianqing led Bai Long, Ji Wuhan, Ji Wushuang, and the others to quietly invade this world. It took them 2 months to kill the general of the heaven-treading army, as well as more than 100 captains and more than 8,000 soldiers. They no longer cared about the rest of the matter, leaving it to that world's martial artists to deal with on their own. Ji Tianqing and the others quietly left, controlling the 5 elements world to continue roaming the void. 3 months later, they saved another world and killed hundreds of martial gods and thousands of heaven-conquering warriors. At this moment, the 5 elements world had entered the hinterland of the Azure Sun galaxy. In the void, there would be a mortal world not too far away. 5 months later, Lucid World was rescued. ALV2 True God Realm Expert, more than 80 captains, and more than 6,000 soldiers had been killed by Ji Tianqing and the others. 8 months later, the Changyang world was saved, and close to 10,000 Heaven Punishers were killed. 12 months later, the Heaven Punisher race that controlled the Golden Cloud world was destroyed. 15 months later, the Danxia world was rescued, and tens of billions of martial artists and commoners regained their freedom. 1.5 years later, as time passed, one world after another was rescued. The number of Heaven Punishers that had died to Ji Tianqing and the others also increased, to the point where it was almost impossible to count. During this process, Ji Wuhan and Ji Wushuang received the greatest amount of training. When everyone was flying, the 2 of them cultivated in seclusion in the Jiutian 10 Absolutes Tower. When Ji Tianqing found a world and was about to carry out the rescue plan, the 2 of them would come out of seclusion to fight and kill the enemy. This continued. When Ji Tianqing had rescued over a dozen worlds, the 2 of them had naturally reached LV9 Martial God Realm. At the same time, they had accumulated enough battle experience, becoming valiant martial gods who had experienced hundreds of battles. Late at night, everyone had just entered the blazing sun world and was about to carry out the assassination plan. When Ji Wushuang saw Ji Tianqing's thoughtful expression, she asked, "Father, what are you thinking about? We've killed our way here and won every battle. Are you worried about something?" Seeing that his daughter was so attentive, Ji Tianqing did not hide anything. He nodded slightly and said, "I'm not worried about anything. I'm just puzzled. We've been in the Azure Sun star zone for almost 3 years. We've rescued over a dozen worlds and destroyed so many heaven-punishing fleets. Marshal Dong should have received the news long ago. Why hasn't he made a move yet?" Bai Long thought for a moment and said with a playful smile, "If Marshal Dong had received the news and gathered his elite fleets to intercept us, it would have been easy. We could have gotten rid of them all in one fell swoop. Then, we wouldn't have to run around and rescue so many worlds. However, Marshal Dong probably wouldn't have the guts to intercept us after hearing Master's name. He would have pissed his pants in fear." Ji Wuhan shot a glance at Bai Long and said with an indifferent expression, "Eldest senior brother, you're so adept at seizing every opportunity and flattering others. Your skills have already reached the pinnacle of perfection. Junior brother admires you greatly." Bai Long was not embarrassed at all. He said earnestly, "Junior brother, although your family's background is unparalleled, your talent is unparalleled, and your demeanor is extraordinary, but, you can't always be so cold. Even if a beautiful woman falls in love with you, she will be scared away by you. You have to learn from me. Otherwise, you won't be able to get a wife in the future and make Master and Master's wife worried about you." Ji Wuhan's little face immediately became embarrassed. He said with a straight face, "Junior brother is still young. Senior brother worries too much." After saying that, he stopped talking to avoid being teased by Bai Long. Bai Long, however, did not let him go. He shook his head and sighed, "Alas, there are too many monks and too little gruel. There are too many wolves and too little meat. Junior brother, you can't let your guard down. You have to consider such a major life event as soon as possible. You have to start dating when you're still a baby. Ji Wuhan had always been cold and taciturn. How could he listen to such gossip? He became even more embarrassed. Ji Wushuang's little face was also red. He glared at Bai Long angrily, but he didn't know how to refute. Seeing that Bai Long was getting more and more enthusiastic, Ji Tianqing glared at him angrily. Bai Long, don't talk nonsense and teach children bad things. Besides, you're still a loner. How can you have the nerve to talk about others? Bai Long choked. He hurriedly smiled and said, Master is right. Humph. Who told you to talk nonsense and get scolded? Ji Wushuang immediately covered his mouth and snickered, taking pleasure in Bai Long's misfortune. Ji Tianqing said seriously, this time, we must capture the general of the fleet in order to save the blazing sun world. Leave him alive. I want to interrogate him properly and see if I can find any useful information. Bai Long, Ji Wuhan, Ji Wushuang, and the others all nodded solemnly to show that they understood. 2 days later, everyone finished deploying and began the killing plan. After half a month of fighting, more than 80% of the heaven-conquering fleet guarding the blazing sun world had been killed. General Gu Mo, who commanded the fleet, was also captured alive by Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing indeed obtained an important piece of information from this person. Chapter 2667. Originally, General Gu Mo would rather die than surrender, and he would not reveal the truth. However, the White Dragon soon showed him that some tortures were even more terrifying than death. Moreover, Ji Tianqing could use a soul-searching secret technique to directly devour his soul and memories. Only then did General Gu Mo's willpower crumble, and he honestly answered Ji Tianqing's question. According to his confession, Marshal Dong had been overseeing the Black Sun Star since the East conquering fleet occupied it. For the past 40 years, Marshal Dong had obtained a large amount of resources and treasures, and he had been cultivating in seclusion. Normally, he would only use communication jade slips to contact the generals and grasp the situation of the various worlds. However, 2 years ago, something major happened in the Black Sun Star domain. A heaven-conquering fleet discovered a strange star when they were searching for resources and boundless divine stones in the scattered star sea. That star seemed huge, far larger than any mortal world, but only half of it remained. Moreover, the star was shrouded in a sacred golden light, and it emitted a glorious and vast divine aura. Inside the shattered golden light barrier, there were countless cities and kingdoms on the remaining half of the star. There were also tens of thousands of glorious divine temples. The architectural style of the planet was completely different from that of the mortal world. There were magnificent jade palaces, temples, and mansions everywhere. After the star shattered, many cities, kingdoms, and continents fell apart, and billions of buildings were turned into ruins. However, one could still see the former glory of those collapsed ruins and distorted cities. The heaven-conquering fleet boarded the shattered star and searched through the countless ruins. They found countless divine weapons and treasures. The star was filled with divine-grade resources, and there were also countless divine abilities and secret techniques. Unfortunately, most of the divine weapons and treasures were already damaged. The divine abilities, secret techniques, and books were also written in the language of the gods. The heaven-conquering fleet could not understand them at all. Even so, this discovery shocked them to the core and excited them to the extreme. They immediately sent out a message to report this matter to their general. That general knew that this matter was of great importance and most likely involved the gods, so he quickly reported it to Marshal Dong. Even though Marshal Dong was cultivating in seclusion, he was overjoyed when he heard this news, and quickly ended his seclusion. After some preparations, Marshal Dong led a large number of guards and rushed to the scattered star sea to check the situation of the broken star. It didn't take long for the news to spread throughout the Azure Sun galaxy. The martial gods of the various worlds also realized that the star had something to do with the gods. If he could obtain some benefits from the stars, he might be able to greatly increase his strength and even ascend to the upper realm. Therefore, many martial gods, space pirates, and explorers had gathered in groups and headed to the star. Heroes from all walks of life gathered on that star, and inevitably, a great battle broke out. In order to monopolize that star, Marshal Zhendong gave the order to mobilize a large number of fleets to reinforce it. Just 10 days ago, General Guemo received the marshal's order. He was currently gathering his troops and preparing to head to the scattered star seas as reinforcements. Unexpectedly, before he could leave the scorching sun world, he had fallen into Ji Tianqing's hands. After hearing the news, Ji Tianqing and Bai Long looked at each other with a hint of surprise in their eyes. The two of them said in unison, "Divine Star." Ji Wuhan and Ji Wushuang looked puzzled. They asked curiously, "Father, what's a divine star?" Xian Yu, Black Dragon, Blue Kuan, and the Glazed Fire Dragon also looked expectant as they stared at Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing explained calmly, "The vast god realm gathers the gods from 3,000 worlds. There are tens of thousands of races, and naturally, there are tens of thousands of divine abilities and cultivation methods. The majority of the gods absorb the power of the stars and cultivate divine Tao laws to increase their strength. However, there are also a small number of gods who use the path of faith to quickly increase their strength while cultivating. They rule or raise many living beings, and have their people worship them to provide them with the power of faith. The weaker gods can rule a tribe, a city, or even a country. However, the powerful divine kings can refine an entire star. They raise tens of billions of living beings on the star to provide them with the power of faith. These stars that are refined by the divine kings to raise believers are called divine stars. After listening to Ji Tianqing's explanation, Ji Wuhan, Ji Wushuang, and the four divine beasts were enlightened. White Dragon added, "As the divine king's strength increases, the divine star can also expand. Moreover, the divine king's methods are exceedingly powerful, and he can store the divine star in his body and carry it with him." In his previous life, Master roamed the world and killed many divine kings. He also crushed several divine stars with his bare hands. Ji Wuhan and the others listened with fascination, and they all looked shocked and surprised. Xian Yu smiled and said, "I roughly understand. For example, Old Ji has refined the five elements world. This world is equivalent to his divine star. It's just that Old Ji didn't establish faith and let the people of the five elements world believe in him." Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "That's right, that's the reason. Now that I'm in the mortal world, even if I use the path of faith to gather the power of faith, I can't break through to the heavenly god realm. Let's not waste time. When I return to the divine realm in the future, if I want to increase my strength quickly, I might consider this method." Ji Wuhan thought for a while and said solemnly, "According to what Father said, the shattered star in the scattered star ocean should be a divine king's divine star. However, that divine king might have met with misfortune, so his divine star shattered and fell into the void. Since Marshal Dong Zhenzhong and a large number of heaven punishers are on that divine star, how can we miss this opportunity? Why don't we also rush to that divine star and capture Marshal Dong Zhenzhong and the others in one fell swoop?" Although Ji Wuhan's wish was very strong, he still needed to ask Ji Tianqing for permission to make the decision. Everyone turned to look at Ji Tianqing, waiting for him to make the decision. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said, "No hurry, I'll ask another question." Then, he turned to General Guemo and asked in the Heaven Punisher's language, "On that star, other than the Heaven Punishers, the martial gods of various worlds, and the space pirates, are there any other experts? There were originally living beings on that star, were there any survivors?" Previously, everyone had been conversing in the human language, so General Guemo couldn't understand. Therefore, he didn't know what exactly that shattered star was. Being pressed by Ji Tianqing, he could only answer truthfully, "I don't know either." The marshal's orders didn't mention this. Ji Tianqing frowned and asked a few more questions. However, General Gu Mo's knowledge was limited, so he couldn't answer at all. Seeing that he was no longer of any use, Ji Tianqing gave White Dragon a look and left with the others. White Dragon understood tacitly and killed General Gu Mo with a punch. After destroying the corpse, he left with the others. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.